Our first item is a presentation given by the Visalia Unified School District on the new Visalia Technical Education Center. Good morning, Drew. How are you this morning?
Morning. Very good. Drew Sorensen, Visalia Unified School District. This morning we're very thankful that you've invited us, and specifically Vicki Porter, who is going to be our teaching principal for the first year and then hopefully become just the principal as we expand. In our vision to incorporate charter schools within the district, it will be a dependent charter. If you follow any of the terms out there, dependent means that it will come under the collective bargaining agreements and all of our things that we have with Visalia Unified. But we also felt that it's important to again meet the needs of all of our students, and by providing more technical education, we just think that's a great opportunity for us. With me is also Dr. Todd Odo. Todd starts on July 1 officially as an area superintendent with us. I actually oversaw Vicki for about 2.5 months when John Ramirez left, and now Todd is coming on, so he'll be the person who's going to be overseeing what we call our educational options and also all of our new charter schools. So Todd's here as well. And so if you have a chance, if you haven't ever met him, Todd has just recently been the principal at Redwood High School for the last 4 years, and now we've stolen him down to the district office like all good district offices do. And now, though, I'd like to pass it over to Vicki Porter. Last year was a learning director at Charter Alternatives Academy, which is another charter school we have here in Visalia, housed out at the Union Elementary School. And then this year now, we'll be opening a new school. So we're happy to have her, and thank you very much for inviting us.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for letting me come and present about VTech. It's an exciting concept, I think. And one of the reasons I wanted to come and present to you is I know the board's commitment to the youth in the community. I've worked with the board before in other areas, especially at my other charter school. So this is yet another way to connect youth that are potentially perhaps disconnected at the beginning of their educational careers and get them on a pathway that would be successful and a benefit to their community. So that's one of the reasons that I'm presenting to you today. Visalia Technical Education Center is, as Drew said, a charter school, a dependent charter from Visalia Unified. It will be opening this school year, August 19th. And our focus, we're developing a focus. It'll always be sophomores, juniors, and seniors. We won't be housing freshmen. We'll be bringing freshmen in from other high schools, but the sophomore year will be the foundational year at VTech. And the first year, we're bringing in one class of sophomores, 70 students, and we're going to have our primary 2 pathways that we're beginning with, developing more. But the first year, we have an agricultural focus with an emphasis in the areas of the veterinary technician program, which is being implemented at COS. The registered veterinary technician is kind of like a registered nurse to a doctor, and it's a strong pathway. We're going to be starting with concurrent enrollment as the sophomore year and going along that pathway. And also food science technology, tapping into the agricultural foundation in our county. Year 2 and 3, we are talking about expanding into construction and industrial maintenance, and we're exploring options in public safety. The RVT pathway I mentioned, these are the 3 stops along the pathway, and the reason that that's kind of important is this is kind of a unique school because the focus is career technical. But it doesn't mean that a student, once they enter the pathway, doesn't go to a 4-year college. I think people kind of think either or, you're headed for a university or you're going straight to work. This kind of gives a variety of options, focusing the students in their career pathway. But for example, in this veterinary pathway, there are several stops along the way. You could go straight to work right as a senior with your certifications that you've gained as a veterinary technician assistant, or you can continue at COS, get further certified if you've gotten connected, or even go to a 4-year college once you've graduated from COS. So once the kids get connected, there are several stops along the way. Food science technology, that's the same idea. Students will be concurrently enrolled in COS classes. even in their sophomore year, and they'll be articulated credits. The facilities, this is all happening right on the COS Ag Farm campus, and as you may know, they're moving to Tulare, so we'll be making good use of those facilities by moving into those buildings while they're moving to Tulare. So VTech is going to be right there on the corner of Walnut and Linwood, and we'll be sharing as we transition. This is the part that's kind of exciting. 100% of our graduates, we're making this commitment, and because we'll remain small, 70 students each class, that's 210 total. Our focus will be that 100% of our graduates, and this is what's exciting to the youth in this area, will either go immediately into the workforce with certifications for entry level or higher. So you may be a senior graduating going right to work, not necessarily at the lower level, but because you're certified into something you're certified for. Or they may decide to continue in their COS pathway for post-secondary certification. Or once they complete those, they may decide to go on for further certifications, but we're making a 100% commitment for our graduates. Our student enrollment, we're getting our initial enrollments from Visalia Unified, but it is open to, because it's a charter school, to all students in the Tulare County area. And as I mentioned, it's 70 sophomores to start, and then we'll be building each year. Our first senior graduates, our commitment is also that 100% of our students will graduate, and have a great staff that's focused on that. So I wanted to bring that information to you and share with you what we're doing, Visalia Unified's doing for the youth in Tulare County. Thank you.
Thank you. Very interesting. And those numbers are impressive. I was just reading the statistics nationally about the number of students who graduate, and it's pretty dismal. And California is even worse. That's actually better in our area than it is in the more urban population base. But if we were to compare those numbers with many other government programs, I think we'd call them failures. And so it's good that we see that we're setting a bar that's a higher standard. So congratulations and thank you. Are any questions from members? Yes. Pete?
I did have one question, but you kind of answered it when you said that it's open to all Tulare County students. Especially with the COS campus expanding into Tulare and that being their primary agricultural facility. Any efforts with the Tulare Joint Union High School District, which I know doesn't really have a charter school, will have a tech prep, but it's not really a charter school.
Well, one of the things, because we're a charter school, anyone in Tulare County and even neighboring counties can attend. Our initial referrals came from our own Visalia Unified schools, but we did a press release, and we are now going out to a wider, anyone from Tulare County can come that's interested in these pathways. And we do expect that we'll end up with some waiting lists and students from everywhere. But yeah, I think we're going to be connecting the dots in all these, in the whole area.
Okay, great, thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, thanks. I'm going to use my discretion this morning. We have a large consent calendar, and I know that the PFM presentation will take a little bit of time, so I'd like to go ahead and go to our consent calendar at this time. We're going to pull items 7 and 56 for separate discussion and action. Item 9 needs to be corrected to have Edward Needham's term ending on June 30th, 2012. Item 20 needs to be corrected to have the period commencing on July 1st, 2010. Are there other items that the members wish to have handled separately? If not, I will entertain a motion.
Motion to approve a consent calendar, pulling to item 756 and others as amended.
I'll second that.
Please cast your votes. Votes passed unanimously. We'll take up item number 7 this time.
Good morning, I'm Rita
Everyone wants to
Woodard.
claim vector control responsibility, I guess.
Yes, I'm Rita Woodard. I'm the County Auditor, Controller, Treasurer, Tax Collector. And good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Mr. Rousseau, and Ms. Bells-Lang. Today we're here to ask for approval of an agreement between Delta Vector Control and the County of Tulare. Delta Vector Control held an election. On April 14th, it was approved by the voters that Delta Vector Control put an assessment on the vote in the people of their district, and not the county of Tulare put an assessment on the voters of the district, as was in the local newspaper, which I have asked the local newspaper to please put in a correction on that, put at least a clarification, if nothing else, that we are not putting an assessment on. In the ballot measure was the terms for the county to collect this assessment on the tax roll if it passed, and this agreement is to allow the county to recoup the costs for what the voters voted in for Delta Vector's assessment. Okay. So we ask for your approval of that agreement to collect the county's costs for that assessment voted in by the voters.
Thank you for that clarification.
I'd move for approval.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Ennis, seconded by Mr. Cox. Please cast your vote. The votes are unanimous. Thank you. Item 56. Good morning.
Good morning, Board. Britt Fussell, Assistant Director with the Resource Management Agency, and I appreciate your patience as we try to award this contract to Glen Wells Construction for the AC overlay on Avenue 384. The reason for my request for having this item pulled this morning is I provided you with an amended resolution for consideration. What's happening is we put 3 American Recovery and Reinvestment Act projects out to bid. One of those projects came in with a bid low enough that we actually were not using about $305,000 of ARRA money, and we don't want to see that money leave the county. So the project that's on your agenda today for Mr. Wells actually has enough headroom in it that we can move that $305,000 to this project and make sure that we spend it all. But that requires process, and it has to be approved by Caltrans and FHWA, or Federal Highways Administration, before that can happen. We have the Caltrans approval, we're awaiting the FHWA approval, and they have indicated to us if this contract is awarded and signed prior to receiving that approval, then we are stuck with the initial amount and we lose the $305,000. So what I'm asking the board, or recommending the board to do, is to amend the agreement that allows that no action regarding the approval or the chairman's signature of the agreement would occur until we receive what's called the E76 AMOD. And I've worked with Caltrans, and they're satisfied that this would work in their regard. And this allows us, if we receive that approval today, tomorrow, Thursday, to get these contracts signed without waiting 2 weeks to bring it back for your board's action.
Britt, in so doing, does the project itself change in terms of?
No,
It's just
there's
the same
no-
project, it's just
same project.
a funding issue of
Right.
allocation of dollars.
Same contractor, same scope of work, same contract price. The only thing is we're trying to make sure we get this money into the program so that we don't lose it.
I was just hoping we'd just continue that road project on further, but that's okay. All right.
I'd move approval.
We have a motion by Mr. Vanderpool.
I'll second with a quick question.
Second by Mr. Ennis for the question.
Phil's got a question.
The question begs to be answered. We're not taking it just to spend it. This would be underfunded by $305,000 if we did not do
No,
this.
actually what's happening on this particular project, we had the ARRA money, we had some safety lieu farm-to-market money in the project, and we had some old T21 money in the project. And the bids came in low enough is that what we're doing is we're pulling the safety lieu funding from the project, and we're going to be coming forward with a new project to spend that money, and we're replacing that with the ARRA money to make sure we maximize this expenditure.
Thank you.
We have a vote, a motion, a second. Please cast your votes. And the votes are unanimous.
Thank you, Board.
Brett. Appreciate that. All right, that will take us then to, back on schedule with item number 2. It's a presentation given by PFM Asset Management regarding our annual Millennium Fund report. Good morning.
Good morning, everyone. See you again. It's hard to believe it's already been 12 months. Thank you. Although it may not seem like it, we are in a very different market than we were last year. And I say that with a lot of caveats and, of course, a lot of qualifiers as well. But as you'll recall, there was a lot of doom and gloom in the report with respect to the economy, so I won't be as morose today has actually, and this is all relative, a lot of the credit markets and corporate markets have improved. Let's see here. It's not moving. Certainly. Lauren Brandt, PFM Asset Management and Managing Director. Sorry about that. Oh, there we go. That's- Do you want me to just...
So,
Thank you, Michelle. Great, thank you. So some of the areas where we've seen some improvement over the last 12 months include the corporate markets. Although we still see some uncertainty and signs of uncertainty, they've improved quite substantially over the last 12 months. Also the credit markets. Credit markets have begun to thaw. As you'll recall, last year and over the last 18 months, we've had it where banks have been so tight with credit that it's been very difficult to borrow, either as an investor, consumer, or a business. The other positive sign that we've seen is that a lot of the federal stimulus programs that were enacted over the last 12 to 18 months have started to take effect and started to bolster some of the economic growth as measured by GDP, pushing it into positive territory for the first time. That, like I said, is mostly relative because there are still some significant headwinds that face us, including unemployment at near 10% levels. We also still have a very sluggish housing market, and certainly within the recent weeks, as everybody is aware, European debt concerns would certainly have a global impact on the economy. But all in all, turning more specifically to the Millennium Fund, all in all, it's been a positive 12-month period for the Millennium Fund. Those not familiar with the program, or just as a reminder, since we come once a year, the Millennium Fund program is a program whereby in 1999 the county issued $45 million of variable rate demand notes. And these were short-term notes, and the reset on the interest occurred each month. The fund was created, it's securitized by tobacco settlement payments, and it's created to help with ongoing funding and maintenance of capital projects within the county on an annual basis, as well as to create an endowment, a self-sustaining program through the years, and actually originally projected to last over 75 years. In 2006, the opportunity arose and the county capitalized on it to refund the bonds and privately place them with a bank called Dexia Bank. And this actually helped to reduce the costs of the program by eliminating some of the middlemen, so to speak, the remarketing agents, the letter of credit fees, and reset the monthly rate to LIBOR, which is a short-term taxable rate, plus 25 basis points or 0.25%. So it eliminated all those costs that fluctuated on a month-to-month basis. Now, in addition to that, the foresight was that, unbeknownst to us, that this happened all prior to the credit and liquidity crunch that occurred in 2007 and 2008. So the county's program was isolated from all of these events, which was a great thing. Now, although the structure of the program has changed somewhat over time, the investment goals certainly haven't. And one of the primary goals being to achieve parity, whereby the value of the fund is equal to or greater than the outstanding principal of the fund. So that you, again, have a self-sustaining program over time. And then certainly one of the other objectives, of course, is to grow that program over time through prudent and active management, as well as to ensure that that we control risk as well. To get into some of the details here, the value of the fund as of April 1st, which is the valuation date that we use each year, was close to $50.7 million. And this value comprises three different funds, of the largest of which is the Millennium Fund. But the bond fund is a fund where all the debt service and other operational costs are paid from. And that's funded each year out of a portion of the tobacco settlements. And the tobacco settlement fund is where we receive the payments each year, and those usually occur on or near the middle of April. This year, the county received $3.7 million of tobacco settlement. So that is excluded from that $50.7 million number. And I want to point out that there's some significance as well to that $50 million number, because in 2006, when the bonds were restructured, that's the new target or the new bogey whereby through 4/5 vote and approval by the board, the county may exceed the annual appropriation amount of $3.5 million. Over and greater, above and greater than $3.5 million by the approval of the board. The value is also important because it helps to determine the unwind exposure, which is, again, another benefit of the fund to show that it is self-sustaining to achieve parity. So right now, with $50.7 million of value, the outstanding proceeds or principal of the funds are approximately $40.4 million, which leaves you in a positive, favorable position of $10.2 million. What this really means is if the program was collapsed today, not including any costs associated with collapsing the program, you would have $10.2 million worth of value. And this has occurred despite some declining statistics relative to cigarette sales. So cigarette sales have declined 2% each year over the last 10 years. Also, smokers are turning to alternative types of and cheaper types of nicotine as well. And the other portion being that almost $2 million, we're down almost $2 million with respect to where we thought we'd be with projections because of some of the withholding from some of the larger players, including R.J. Reynolds, and because they are still fighting the fight and wanting not to pay out all that they've been ordered to. Now, the program has continued to grow, the endowment has continued to grow even as the county is appropriating money each year. So $26.7 million has been appropriated through 2009, so over the last 10 years. And as you'll see, that break in 2007 when the refunding occurred at the end of 2006, $4.5 million was taken out as one time, and then that increase, the appropriation increase went from $2.5 to $3.5 million. The program performance, again, in addition to the measure of the unwind value, we also look at how the aggregate borrowing rate compares to the investment rate. And right now it's in positive territory, close to 0.5%, 0.4%, which we think is very, very favorable, very, very positive, and as a result of several different factors. One of which we didn't have any control over, and that would be that the fact that, again, in 2007, 2008, even into 2009, the corporate markets were very challenging, difficult. Corporate debt, the prices fell out, they were hard hit, and we lost a lot of value with respect, unrealized market value losses with respect to those, to that sector. And as you can see, the Millennium Fund has almost half of the portfolio invested in corporate securities. These are high quality AA, AAA rated corporates, but at the same time, no sector was left unscathed with the exception of U.S. Treasuries, which are risk-free investments. At the same, so those markets have improved, those prices have stabilized, which has helped to enhance the value of the fund. At the same time, the corporate securities that we do own are floating rate securities. So their yields and coupons are reset to LIBOR, which helps hedge against rising interest rate costs. So directly tied to your borrowing rates, your investment rates are also rising as well. So this has helped with the value of the fund as well. In addition, and I'm sorry, these are some of the small print here, we've diversified the portfolio by issuer, not having too much in all of our eggs in one basket, a mantra Econ 101, at the same time emphasizing and diversifying into new investment types that are that we haven't introduced into the Millennium Fund before, including U.S. Treasury securities, as well as FDIC guaranteed notes, which were corporate notes issued under one of the federal programs, the Temporary Liquidity Guarantee Program. So they act just like a Treasury security because they have the full faith and credit of the United States government without the credit risk. So you get a lot of the yield without the credit risk. And finally, the placement of these investments. In the 1 to 3 year maturity area, the steepest part of the yield curve where we think there's been a lot of value. And so 80% of the portfolio is currently positioned there. Now, this is not to say, so as well as the program has performed, that we remain cautious with respect to where we are in the current marketplace and where we're going in the next 12 months. There's certainly some of our concerns lie in the fact that rates remain extremely low, well below their historical averages. The Federal Reserve just came out in their recent statement and said that they will likely keep rates low for an extended period, and that Fed funds target rate currently sits at 0 to 0.25%. So rates will remain very low. At the same time, That LIBOR rate, the taxable short-term rate, has risen quite significantly in recent weeks as a result of the European debt crisis. So trying to balance those two will be certainly a challenge for us in the coming year. And the other thing is just market volatility. Markets are very sensitive to economic data right now, and so we have to combat that and make sure that we position the portfolio appropriately. So some of the things that we're going to do, specific strategies, again, as I mentioned, with the borrowing rates climbing higher and investment rates remaining low, our goal is certainly always to try to achieve and certainly exceed the amount of the borrowing rate, but right now we're just going to try to keep pace. And because what we don't want to do is we can achieve that borrowing rate, but it would mean investing further out the yield curve, maybe 3, 4, 5 years. And we don't want to do that given that rates are historically low. So we want to minimize the interest rate risk exposure to the county's, to the Millennium Fund portfolio. So we're just going to try to keep pace. The other thing we're going to do is we still like the corporate sector as investments mature. We're going to look rather, though, to non-financial sectors in the corporate market, more industrial sectors to help diversify. So we're going to keep the portfolio flexible and adaptable through this next interest rate cycle. Any questions?
I notice we're avoiding issuers with ties to Southern Europe.
Yes, indeed. For somewhat obvious reasons. There's certainly some of the European bank stress tests are coming out in the next couple of weeks, so that'll be an interesting revelation because it will also play to the fact of what their sovereign debt exposure is as well.
Any questions? Lauren, thanks for being here. One thing I know in the past we've talked a little bit about the long-term objectives, and I know in earlier parts of when we first began the Millennium Fund, we were able to achieve far above that. It's been more challenging as we go forward. How are we in terms of our long-term objectives at this point?
A very good question. So the long-term objective when we originally structured the program in 1999 was to, we are well ahead of the parity. So we actually hit parity in 2003, about 4 years sooner than we thought we would. And then from just a strictly investment return standpoint relative to the borrowing cost, the original target was 0.5%, 50 basis points, and we're at 40, which I think is pretty positive relative to the challenges that we've seen in the unprecedented markets that we've had.
That's where we are today. If maybe you don't have the answer, but like if we had projected back in 1999 based upon the 50 basis points, where would we have been today? I know we were 4 years ahead, and then we've had the challenging times since then. So are we still above or below where we projected to be that 11 years ago?
Oh, thank you. I understand the question. We're actually about $2 million ahead of where we projected in terms of the overall value of the fund.
Very good. That's good information. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Nice seeing you.
A little warm to play golf here today. You may want to head back to San Francisco. Okay. That'll bring us to our public comments. This is the time and place for people who wish to address us on matters that are not on today's agenda but are within our jurisdiction are invited to come forward. I have two. One is our Fire Chief, Steve Sunderland, who was going to give us an update on one of our injured firefighters. Welcome, Chief.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, distinguished members of the board. Steve Sunderland, Tulare County Fire Chief. As you all know, in the wee hours of Saturday morning, just after midnight, two of our firefighters were struck by a car while attending to a strip and burn vehicle fire. Captain Gary Gregory received a glancing blow and is on limited duty now, light duty, due to his minor injuries. Engineer Pat Hines was struck center mass by the pickup when it sped through the scene. He's currently in Regional Medical Center. He's in the burn unit where he's being accommodated a single room and much greater ratio of attention than what he would receive on the medical floor. And that's owed to the association that our Professional Firefighters Association here in Tulare County has with the burn unit. They participate in burn unit fundraisers and events and are very well connected there, and they made that request on Pat's behalf that if he could be placed in the burn unit, that were ultimately he ended up there. Pat is scheduled for surgery on one of his legs Wednesday. He had a good night last night. His vital signs were stable. I stopped to see him Sunday afternoon. He was headed to the CT scan to determine if he had any further injuries in his shoulder area. He does not. It was determined, though, that he does have a broken arm, included in the 18 fractures in his rib cage. Both legs are broken. One knee is completely shattered. He is heavily sedated and is on a ventilator in as much that he's intubated. His breathing function is of grave concern. It was shared with me that his lung capacity and condition will worsen before it gets better. I fear that pneumonia is certainly the concern there. There have been bank accounts set up at the Tulare County Federal Credit Union branches throughout the county in an effort to help support his brother as his only family. They do not work outside the fire department relationship that they have with the county fire department. So money is an issue, and for Mike to attend to his brother's needs and his needs to visit his brother, there's been an account set up to help offset that cost. As you might imagine, we've received a lot of media attention, both in all fashions, the print, radio, TV, etc. Chief John Crivello is our Extra Help Firefighter Program Manager in the department, and I have appointed him as the principal contact for all internal and external agency contacts and information sharing. Captain Gary Gregory, the other individual that was struck on the scene, is serving as a family and hospital liaison. We have relieved him of his fire station duties for the next couple of weeks, provided him with a vehicle, and he's coming and going, attending to Pat's needs. Pat's brother Mike, it's expected that he will give Gary, Captain Gregory, power of attorney to help with Pat's medical decisions. And that's my report.
Thank you, Steve. Are
Any
there
questions?
questions, members? No. Our prayers are with him and his
Certainly
family. Thank you
appreciate it.
very much
Thank you.
for bringing that to us. I have one other person, Al Engel, who's asked to speak this morning. Morning, sir.
Al Engel, and I do live in Tulare County, Waukena specifically, even though I have a P.O. box of Corcoran. But our concern from our local car clubs, the Horses Carriage Club of America, and other local clubs, numerous ones, we met in January about changing some ordinances for the storage of non-operational vehicles. Since we are car collectors, we're very concerned about this, and as yet nothing has been started on that. I even checked this morning, and it's been given the directive to this person that does the changes to put it aside and concentrate on other ordinances first. What it is we have collector cars, and there's a lot of cars in general that people consider, abandoned, and that may be pertinent to them on the storage of those derelict cars. We as collectors, we keep them organized, and like for my situation, I keep them lined up and up on blocks, and weeds cut, and pestilence control, rodent control, the whole 9 yards. Thing is, nothing's been done about changing this ordinance to be congruent with other counties. I've checked other counties surrounding, and like Kearns and Kings do not have an ordinance that says that all non-operational vehicles, collector or otherwise, have to be stored inside a building, which Tulare ordinance says. They basically say out of view. And I've checked with other ordinances throughout the state of California and different counties, and they're likewise the same thing, just basically out of view, which it can be construed or interpreted, as they've told me verbally, behind a fence, behind a row of hedges, car covers, that type of thing, preferably fitted car covers. Nevertheless, we're trying to get a little fire under the Planning Commission, the people to get something done. Maybe it hasn't been forgotten totally, but we don't want it to be forgotten. There's a lot of car collectors in this county, in this whole valley, as you know, and they call upon us to go to the various car shows and the parades in the various cities, Tulare, Visalia, all over the place. which draws in revenue. And that's important to you guys. And that's important, I understand that. But, these cars don't restore themselves. And we have to have cars to work on and to draw parts from, et cetera. So I'd appreciate if we could get you guys to maybe put some, pressure on the county planning commission to get something done on that regard. And I do appreciate your time. Are there any questions on that regard?
Questions? Thank you, Mr. Engel.
Thank you very much. Have a
Appreciate
good
your
day.
comments. We can't take action on items today, but I'm sure the RMA director heard your comments and will be responding. All right, any other public comments from anyone? Yes, sir. Please give us your name and address.
Greg Shelton, 88 North Williford Drive in Porterville. I'd first like to congratulate Supervisor Ennis for his victory, and Supervisor Wordley for having to endure 6 more months of it.
Thank you.
Also, Rita Woodard, Phil Klein, Roland Hill. Although Rita and Phil's victory was a little easier than Roland's. I'm just here to support some of what Al said. I also am a car junkie, and I have a lot of old cars. And in Porterville, we had a similar problem, and we rectified it by writing an ordinance whereby we said if it was a car and if it was, a parts car, or, a collector's car that you can restore, as long as it was screened by a 6-foot fence in good 6-foot fence in good repair, which means you just couldn't put a 6-foot fence up that was falling down. It had to be a fence that was in good shape. Then the presumption was that you had some privacy there, and the idea was whether it was back there or not, if it out of sight, out of mind. And it seemed equitable. It's still kind of expensive if you have a big piece of property. I spent about $15,000 on a fence, but I think it was a good compromise. It was basically a nice ordinance. We didn't want one man's junk is another man's jewel, and so what we did is we said, okay, you may not like it, but we'll just mask it from you, and it seems to have worked out well. So that might just be a potential compromise for the situation. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comments? Seeing none, we'll close the public comment period and bring up the Board of Supervisor matters. And turn to Mr. Ennis first. And congratulations on the final outcome.
Thank you. I'm still rinsing the mud off. But no, it was a tough race, and I'm very glad that I'm going to be able to sit on the board for another 4 years. This week we'll be having our second meeting for the RAC, Resource Advisory Council, at the Forest Service. So that'll be tomorrow night, and we'll be choosing our chairman and determining where we're headed, and start looking at different projects that will fit into the scheme of the RAC, and hopefully this next 6 to 9 months be awarding some money to some of the mountain communities and things for projects up there. But that's pretty much all I have to say this morning. Thank you.
Mr. Shida.
I'd like to recognize the last speaker as Greg Shelton, is a newly elected council member of the city of Porterville. And that's what I have.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Cox.
I'll be taking off for Los Angeles this evening and attending a conference tomorrow sponsored by the California Endowment, and it will be an all-day conference with the theme of combating gang activity among youth. So I will be attending there with a couple of representatives from Tulare County Office of Education.
Very good. Okay, thank you.
I've got a couple things. First of all, last week on Thursday, we had a luncheon. The Tulare Chamber of Commerce put on a luncheon in the city of Tulare, the Salute to the Dairy Industry. That was a great event, and definitely recognized the importance of the industry here in Tulare County, specifically in Tulare. And so I would encourage everyone out there to definitely remember your dairy industry and buy dairy products and support the industry. Also today, down in Tipton, part of their after-school program to keep their youth out of the gang problem and keep them involved and off the streets during the summer is a trip to the Amazon forest that they're doing in indoors and in their auditorium, and I really salute their superintendent down there for putting on activities in Tipton to help the youth down there. I'll also be attending Dr. Marcella Smith's retirement. She is the superintendent down in Early Mart She is retiring after many years of service down in Early Mart, and look forward to wishing her well in her retirement. And then I also wanted to make mention, like the Chief Sunderland mentioned, about the firefighters, specifically Pat Hines and Gary Gregory from the Alpaugh area. I wanted just to ask everyone to keep them in their thoughts and prayers, because they're going to be going through a very difficult time over these next few weeks, few months. So please keep them in prayer for their service to the county.
Thank you. Last Thursday, I attended the CAST graduation, which was countywide, and these were usually primarily young ladies, but also some young gentlemen who were at-risk youth. Most of them, on the ladies' side, they had either were pregnant or had children and had continued with their education, and there were 120 graduates from this program, and so it was a privilege to be there. They had quite a celebration for them, and our Health Human Service Agency was heavily involved in that program, and just a great thing to see all those little children and all those parents that have continued on with their education. And in light of the numbers that I've referred to just a moment ago about how many people do not graduate from high school, it is quite commendable that these young ladies were able to persevere and still graduate even though they had other responsibilities. And that's all I have. At this time, I'd like to take up on our public hearing item number 6, should be much shorter than I think item number 5, a request from the Sheriff's Department to approve increasing the administrative fee. And good morning, sir.
Morning, Mr. Chair, members of the board, Mr. Russo, Lane. I'm Corey Jones. I'm a lieutenant with the Sheriff's Department. I'm the current commander of the Sheriff's Work Alternative Program. And I'm here this morning to talk to you about a proposed fee increase for this program to keep it viable. The SWAP history. The Sheriff's enacted the SWAP program in 1994 to assist with jail overcrowding. The SWAP program has approximately 18,000 inmates go through its doors. This program is a work alternative program where each candidate must apply and be accepted for program. Once accepted, the candidate must sign a contract setting forth acceptable hours of service. Furthermore, this program allows for low-level offenders, non-violent, non-career criminals, to serve their sentences with little effect to their personal lives and to keep them engaged in the public. For this work alternative program, the inmate must pick up a portion of the costs through the program's fees. Currently, we operate this program under Penal Code Section 4024.2, which allows the program to be enacted to assist with jail conditions. There are currently 207 inmates on the program. The number has been dropping recently because of Penal Code Section 4019, which was enacted in January by the state of California, which now gives low-level offenders, these current offenders we have on our program, half-time credit. So they're only serving half their sentences. The current reduction in qualified candidates from the SWAP program has also lowered the amount of revenue the Sheriff's Department can recover and keeping the program solvent. The SWAP program's fees have assisted the Sheriff's Department with offsetting the costs. Historically, we've been able to recover about 52% of the current cost of the program. Last year, the Sheriff was able to recover, what we did was we compared January through June of last year, $331,000 of the $634,000 total for the entire year, or 52%. These costs include the salaries of 1.5 sergeants, 3 correctional deputies, 3 detention service officers, the vehicle costs, and all the supplies of managing the program. This year, qualified applicants have been reduced as compared to the same time period for last year. We have 558 qualified applicants this year. We had 810 last year, or roughly 65% of the qualified applicants from last year. In 2009, there were 19,289 days for those applicants to work. This year, we've had 10,364 for the same time period. This is a reduction of 47% of the time they spend in custody. As you can see, the numbers are already dropping from 2009. We've recovered $151,893, approximately 49% of the program this time last year. This year, we've approximately recovered 32%, or $98,124. This is a direct result in the amount of time the inmates are spending on the program. The Sheriff's Department proposes to to raise the fees associated with the SWAP program and help keeping it balanced. The current daily fee is $6. The administrative fee is $65, and we have a rescheduling fee of $25. What this fee is, it's a punitive fee. If an inmate misses 3 days unexcused from the program, instead of placing them back into custody, we contact them, we have them come in the office, we find out what their excuse is, we charge them a $25 assessment, we put them back on the program, we reschedule them to keep them in the program. What we're proposing is to raise the fee from $6 to $7. Administrative fee up $25 or $10 from last year to $75. And the rescheduling fee, we want to double to $50. We want to make the punitive action a little more severe. Under the proposed schedule, the Sheriff's Department would have been able to recover this year $121,308 as compared to the $98,000 that we have recovered. This is a difference of $23,000 or 19%. The proposed fee increase will allow the SWAP program to remain solvent and provide needed programs for the Sheriff's Department and the community. In these tough fiscal times, the Sheriff is aggressively looking for ways to keep our program solvent without causing undue strain on the county or the Sheriff's Department's.
Any questions, Mr. Vanderpool?
Lieutenant, would you just quickly go over the actual cost of incarceration for one inmate per day in the county jail?
Well, the approximate costs would be anywhere from $45 to $55 a day.
Okay.
The state I believe charges $65 a day. That's the basic cost. We're not talking any hospitalization care or anything of that nature. That's the basic cost of keeping somebody in custody. What this program does is allow us to reduce those costs by placing them on their own after hours. They cover their own medical costs and their own food costs.
And that was really the point that I was going to make, is that, you know, that $45 to $55 is borne by the taxpayers, the law-abiding taxpayers of Tulare County. And this fee increase, although not even covering costs, you know, it's very difficult to increase fees at any time, especially during this fiscal time, and especially for the population that's going to be paying these fees. However, the rest of Tulare County bears the burden of these fees, of the $45 to $55 a day, if we don't have this program. So although it's difficult to support these increases, I think that it's very important that we cover the cost of the services we provide, and this also allows to keep the jail population down and give these people an opportunity to lead productive lives while they're serving their sentences. So I support this.
Thank you. Anybody else? Entertain a motion?
I'll make that motion.
I'm sorry, this is a public hearing. Before we do that, we need to open the public hearing. I wish you to address this matter before the board is encouraged to come forward at this time. I guess we're all working. Seeing no one, we will close the public hearing and bring it back to the board for action.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Motion by Mr. Vanderpool, seconded by Mr. Ennis. Please cast your votes. Votes are unanimous. And that will take us to item number 5, public hearing request from the Resource Management Agency to uphold the appeal filed by the law offices of Joseph H. Boyd on behalf of the applicant Ronald Redfield.
Good morning, Chairman Worthley, Supervisors. Charlotte Brasuelis, RMA Planning Branch. Before you today is an appeal of the Planning Commission's denial of tentative tract map number TM-805. TM-805 is a proposal to divide 109 acres into 48 residential lots located in the PDFM Plan Development Foothill Combining Special Mobile Home Zone. Staff is requesting that your board hold a public hearing, uphold the appeal filed by the law offices of Joseph H. Boyd on behalf of the applicant, accept the mitigated negative declaration as the appropriate environmental document, and adopt the mitigation monitoring plan for TM-805, and approve TM-805 based on the facts, findings, and conditions of approval as stated in the draft resolution included in your packet. The subject property is located on the west side of Road 220, approximately a quarter mile north of Avenue 360, north of the community of Woodlake. This aerial shows the subject site in relation to the city of Woodlake, which is approximately 1 mile to the north. This graphic depicts the subject site in relation to the city of Woodlake urban area boundary, which is approximately 7/10 of a mile north.
And Charlotte, the urban
Yes, sir.
area boundary is what we now refer to as a 50-year boundary, is that correct? Or that's at least one of the things we talk about in terms of what that, as opposed to the urban development boundary, which is a 20-year line, the urban area boundary line is considered to be a 50-year line?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
This graphic depicts just a closer aerial view of the subject site. The subject site and surrounding areas are within the PDFM zone located within the Kauai River Development Corridor, which is one of 4 designated areas for urban suburban type development in the Foothill Growth Management Plan. 6 public hearings, public meetings were conducted before the Planning Commission over an approximate 17-month period of time from December 2008 to May 2010. At those public meetings, comments were received from adjacent property owners and other persons outside of the area in opposition to the proposal. This is a graphic showing the tentative map as it was originally submitted. As you can see, it looks pretty typical of many subdivisions in the valley. Individual septic systems and domestic wells were proposed on each lot. 2 exceptions were required and requested, one for the individual wells on the lots and one for the length of the cul-de-sac street exceeding the 660-foot minimum requirement by county. This is the revised site plan, which incorporates revisions based on Planning Commission comments and public concerns. A community water system has been included as part of the proposal, which is in compliance with the Foothill Growth Management Plan. 2 well lots have been designated. You can see on the site plan. The lots range in size from 1.36 to 2.9 acres, which exceeds the lot size requirement for individual septic systems. The design is more curvilinear with open spaces throughout the center and also the area to the south. The design also lends itself to a more rural residential appearance, and the density is 0.44 units per acre. Issues and concerns raised at the previous meeting included the general plan consistency, water quality and quantity, groundwater contamination from sewage disposal systems, flooding, lack of urban services, noise, and poor road conditions in the area. In regards to general plan consistency, the Kauai River Development Corridor is one of 4 development corridors established through the Foothill Growth Management Study in 1976. The study was at the request of the Board of Supervisors at that time, and one of the goals was to direct some urban suburban growth to the foothill areas in order to preserve prime agricultural land in the valley floor. The 4 development corridors were the result of the study, which were later adopted as part of the Foothill Growth Management Plan in 1981, and which designated areas based on certain criteria for various types of development, including residential, commercial, industrial. Mobile home parks are also allowed in the PDF zone with special use permit approval. In regards to water quality and quantity, BSK Analytical Laboratories certified that the test results of the on-site water met all requirements for certified drinking water. Additional hydraulic, water, and well tests were conducted by professionals, concluding that adequate water is available on the proposed site. There has been no data submitted, scientific or otherwise, that would indicate that the 2 on-site wells to be utilized for the community water system would not be adequate in terms of quantity or quality. In addition, the use of the water for the proposed residences will be substantially less than what is presently proposed or presently being used for the existing olive orchard. For example, an acre-foot of water is 325,851 gallons of water. It takes approximately 1 acre-foot of water per 5-member household for 1 year period. To farm 1 acre of olives for 1 year requires 2.5 acre-feet of water. 110 acres of olives, this is actually 109 acres, at 2.5 acre-feet of water per acre totals 275 acre-feet per season. A season is about 7 months. A 48-lot subdivision requires 1 acre-foot of water per household of 5 for a year, a total of 48 acre-feet, roughly. In regards to groundwater contamination from sewage disposals, a soils feasibility study was prepared for this project, indicating that it was prepared by Central Valley Testing, and they concluded that the on-site sewage disposal systems are feasible for the lots if developed in accordance with county health and plumbing codes. In addition, a condition of approval requires that all new septic systems be engineered, designed, reviewed, and approved by the Environmental Health Division prior to building permit issues. Again, there has been no information submitted to the county that would indicate that the proposed septic systems would not work efficiently if installed safely and as designed. In regards to flooding, the subject site, according to the FEMA flood maps, is in Zone C, which is an area not likely to flood. A condition of approval, drainage and erosion. Condition of approval requires that drainage and erosion control plans be submitted and reviewed by the engineering division prior to development. And in regards to noise, residences are not considered noise generating uses. Noise levels will be elevated during construction phases, but will be diminished or eliminated once construction has been completed. In regard to poor road conditions in the area, the applicant is required to make road improvements from Avenue 360. Road improvements will be made a half a mile north. That's the red line that you see. And approximately a quarter mile east from the corner of Avenue 360 and Road 220. In accordance with the State MAP Act, the legislative body of a city or county shall deny approval of a tentative map only if it makes certain findings. Those findings are, and I will summarize these findings a little bit, that the proposed map and its design is not consistent with the general plan, that the site is not physically suitable for this type of development or the proposed density as proposed, that the design of the subdivision or the proposed improvements are likely to cause substantial environmental damage to wildlife or their habitat, that the design of the subdivision or type of improvements is likely to cause serious public health problems, and that the design of the subdivision or the type of improvements will conflict with easements acquired by the public at large for access across the site. Based upon staff's reevaluation and further study of the Planning Commission's denial of TM 805, staff has determined that the required findings cannot be made in accordance with the State MAP Act. The proposal is consistent with the general plan. The site is physically suitable for this type of development, as residential development is allowed in the development corridor areas. The site is also suitable for the density of the proposed site, as density of development is based on the constraints of the site. Appropriate analysis and studies have been conducted and prepared, resulting in findings that the proposal is feasible for the site if developed in accordance with the building and health codes and county development standards. And that the development of the site will not cause environmental damage or cause injury to fish or wildlife, nor will it cause serious public health problems. An environmental document was prepared for this project, reviewed and approved by the environmental coordinator, indicating that with mitigation measures, the project would not cause substantial environmental impacts. And the project will not conflict with easements acquired by public at large. These are the staff requests as stated at the beginning of the presentation. And subject to any questions you may have, that concludes staff's summary of the report. I think agents are also here available to speak on this issue. Also, Craig Anderson from our engineering division is available if you have any specific questions regarding road improvements or drainage on the site.
Thank you. Mr. Cox?
What was the Planning Commission's stated reason for denying?
Basically, they said that it does not comply with the general plan.
Well, and I would also ask too, there was an original site plan for this, and then this new one with the curvature of entry.
Mm-hmm.
Was that done prior to or subsequent to or after the Planning Commission denial?
The Planning Commission received the same site plan that you have.
Okay, so the updated one then?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, Ben Kimball, Tulare County RMA. I was going to attempt to help answer any questions. I'll also just point out regarding the Planning Commission's determination, they had a number of concerns brought up by residents that lived in the neighboring areas over some of these issues that Charlotte presented, and felt that their recommendation was that the subdivision be denied, and directed staff to come back with findings for denial. It was kind of an awkward position for staff after having made so many recommendations for approval to come up with these recommendations for denial. And so I think that's really at the heart of the issue today is are those recommendations substantial enough to actually deny the project? And if not, staff's recommendation is approval. So I just want to make sure we clarified that for the record.
Just if I might add, just for clarification, as I understand it, then, that you had a project that went through various iterations as it went before the Planning Commission several times. Recommendations were made back to the applicant to make modifications. Modifications were made. Were there any things that were requested by the commission that the applicant did not do?
Well, I would say that there wasn't anything requested by the Planning Commission that the applicant did not attempt to do. And the final version that you have was an attempt to address those concerns. However, it was seen by the Planning Commission that was not an adequate effort, and that there were still some concerns with the design, or maybe not so much the design, but the physical characteristics of the existing roadways leading to the subdivision, or possible flooding across those roadways in a bad rainstorm further down the road, not where the subdivision is taking place. And so I think those as far as the Planning Commission is concerned, they still have those concerns with the project. So.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Just to avoid any confusion about, regardless of why they made the findings or what the background was, the findings are set forth in your packet. I don't have a page that's numbered, but in the Planning Commission resolution, they start on page 3, and they go beyond, it's not consistent with the general plan. So I do want your board to be aware there were specific findings made, whether staff agrees with them or not.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? We'll open the public hearing. public hearing at this time. Those wishing to address the board are welcome to come forward and give us their name and address.
Good morning, Mr. Chairperson and members of the board. My name is Joseph Boyd. I am the attorney representing Mr. Redfield in this. So give me a moment. I'm going to bring up a PowerPoint presentation on this. I am also passing out to each of you a copy of this presentation, as well as larger copies of any of the maps that I'm using in here, so that you have them in front of you. I'll be brief on this. There are certain portions of the presentation that will overlap with what you just heard, and so I'll glance through those as quickly as possible. This is an appeal of the Planning Commission's findings for denial on Mr. Redfield's, on Redfield Estates tentative map 805. As it states in the staff report, Planning Commission findings for denial are not substantiated by the evidence provided. As we just heard, there were several issues raised, and again, this is another list of, I think it's almost exactly the same list that was given previously by Ms. Persuelas. In talking about some of these things here, on the general plan consistency, as Ms. Persuelas said, this is consistent with the Foothill Growth Management Plan. It is consistent with the general plan. The general plan was adopted in 1976, 34 years ago, and it has not changed ever since then. The quote out there is from the staff report: the proposal is consistent with the intent of the development corridor. To give you an idea of what it looks like out there, you've seen several maps, but this is a different map out there. The area up in the upper right-hand corner of this map here is where the PDFM zoning begins. And you can see it is separate from the city of Woodlake. It is separate from all of the agriculturally zoned areas. It is specifically separate, so as she said before, to preserve the agricultural areas and allow development outside of the urban centers. Waters has been addressed in here. We will be putting a community water system into the development. BSK Laboratories has tested it. The water is clean. It meets all requirements. There is no questions as to the quality of the water. In the staff report, it indicates that the olive orchard uses approximately 8 times the amount of water that residential use would use on that. And this is how we calculated that. There's a question. It's between 2.5 to 3.5 acre feet of water that you use per acre of olives. If you calculate that at 110 acres, that comes out to 385 acre feet. And again, 1 acre foot is what a family of 5 would use. Now, this data for 1 acre foot is actually the maximum amount of any study that we've seen. In fact, we've seen several studies out there that show that a family of 5 uses between 1/4 of an acre foot to about 0.9 of an acre foot. So we increase that and move that all the way up to 1 acre foot to show the total amount. That still comes out to 1/8 of what is used on the olives if the olives use 3.5 acre feet. If you calculate the olives using only 2.5 acre feet, it still comes to 1/6 of what is presently being used on that property. And it should be noted that Mr. Redfield planted those olives in 1984, and he has never had a problem with maintaining the water for his olives. Another way of looking at this is what is actually produced. 4 wells were tested on this property. There are approximately 20 wells on the property, and wells 7, 9, 10, and 11 were tested there. And they produce between 210 and 573 acre feet per year. If you calculate all those together, and Mr. Redfield is perfectly fine with including however many wells are needed for the community water project. If you calculate all those together, you come out with 1,656 acre feet. That's 34 times the amount of water that's needed for this development. Right now, the plan is to use well 7 and well 9 on that. which would produce 783 acre-feet of water per year. Again, that is 16 times the amount of water that is needed for this development. In other words, there is no question that there is sufficient water already being used on the property, and there's sufficient water that can be produced to cover this development. Some of the other issues that were raised were road conditions. Again, there have been questions as to the ability of the roads to handle the density of this project. We have agreed to fix up any of the roads wherever it has been requested. They've asked us to fix up roads, as it says in the plan, in certain portions, and we've agreed to do that. We've agreed to fix culverts. And it has never been an issue with Mr. Redfield to fix up roads wherever it is necessary in order to support this development. We've never argued it. We've never said, well, that's too much. So we're willing to do whatever the county has asked in order to make sure that this development is accessible to the people who live there and to the public. In regards to the septic systems, again, it's been shown the septic systems are feasible. They just have to be approved by the county before they've been constructed. In other words, we can't go out there, dig a hole, and say, hey, there's our septic system. No, it needs to be approved, and that would be standard with almost any development. There's a question as to urban services and as to whether or not the urban services would be adequate for this property. You can look at the other subdivisions of its type and see, because your urban services are going to come from your closest urban area. And so other subdivisions similar to this would be Spring Ridge and Montgomery Ranch, and both Spring Ridge and Montgomery Ranch are approximately 6 miles away from the closest urban area, being Springville. Redfield Estates is less than that. It is only 3.4 miles north of the town of Woodlake, north of the city of Woodlake, and there would be no question as to the availability of urban services. It's actually closer than other developments of its type. Flooding was a question here. It is not in a flooding area. Quote from the staff report, development of the subject site will not promote or perpetuate additional flooding in the area. We have also, like I've said, we've agreed to repair and reconstruct culverts on the roads so that we can make sure that the roads are not flooded out. There are questions as to possible flooding out of the roads, and we will repair those and make sure that the property is accessible to the people that live there. We'll also make sure that there's proper drainage and erosion control so that any of the water that's produced on the property will not flood over into adjacent properties. Noise has been brought up. Residences are not considered noise-generating uses, and the staff report actually indicates that there will be a reduction in noise because you will no longer have the farming operations out there. One way or another, noise really will not be an issue with a subdivision as sparsely populated as this. And finally, the aesthetics, and this has been the big point recently that we have worked to fix. The Planning Commission requested that we provide curvilinear streets, and that they asked that we provide curvilinear streets in the design. We also incorporated green areas, and we use large lots to make sure that the aesthetics of the area are not hurt by the development of the subdivision. We based this new plan on 3 separate subdivisions in the area. Again, Spring Ridge and Montgomery Ranch, which we mentioned, and both of those are in Tulare County, and then Monteverde, which is in Fresno County. And I'll show you how we plan on it looking. If you look, here's Redfield Estates. Again, you can see there's the curvilinear streets. And in the middle there, let's just go like this so you can see. In the middle there, we have open spaces and green areas right there where there will be no houses built, no constructions, no buildings built. This is similar, like I said, to Spring Ridge Estates. In Spring Ridge Estates, you have, again, the curvilinear streets. You have the lots of approximately 1.5 acres in size, varying depending on each lot. And this is how Spring Ridge Estates looks. So you can see that it does not take away from the view of the hills. It does not take away from the atmosphere of the area. You can see it is actually a very beautiful subdivision there. Montgomery Ranch is the same type of thing. You have your curvilinear streets, Again, PDFM zoning, just like Spring Ridge. Again, approximately 1.5 acres in size on the lots. I think Montgomery Ranch might be slightly smaller, but in no case is it less than an acre. And again, you can see how it looks. You do not take away from the foothill aspect of the landscape. The homes there are built on nice home sites, and it is a beautiful subdivision. And finally, Monteverde. And the reason we put Monteverde in here is because we want to show you the green areas. As you can see here, it's in Clovis. It's outside of Tulare County. It's in Fresno County, but it's farther away from the foothills. But we did utilize the concept of the green areas that Monteverde uses. And here's one of the green areas right here. They've actually put in a park in their area. It is between the homes, just like it would be in our subdivision in Redfield Estates. You have beautiful homes on the site, and again, more green areas. This is all done to promote the aesthetic beauty of the area. The green areas also can be used for drainage and flood control in that area if needed. They are designed that way so that again, we are avoiding letting any of the water wash off onto adjacent properties and hurt any neighboring properties. In conclusion, I just want to state, Mr. Redfield purchased this property in 1982. At that time, it had been zoned PDFM, and he purchased it at that time, 28 years ago, with the intent to develop it. He took it out of the Williamson Act at that time, even though he planted his olives. He's paid the excess in property taxes so that he could eventually develop this property into a beautiful subdivision. This has been his plan all along. He has made sure that there's adequate water. He has always made sure that there's adequate water for it. He has worked tirelessly to abide by any request that's been made by the Planning Commission or by staff. We want this to go through, and we really have not been fighting any of the requests there. We have hit every single issue that has been brought up, and we have, my opinion is that we have satisfied every issue that has been brought up. And so we ask you at this time to approve our appeal and to approve the tentative map 805. Thank you.
Question, sir. I note in the report that there will be assessment districts created to maintain the roads in the system, and I don't recall, did that include also maintaining the green areas, the common areas as well?
Yes, yeah, there would be a housing district, and they would maintain the green areas. They would be assessed so that those could be maintained. It would also pay for the water system out there, and would maintain the roads.
Mr. Chairman, may I ask, just to clarify, when you say a housing district, you're going to have an assessment district for water and roads. Is there also going to be a homeowners association, or?
Yes, there would be a homeowners association.
And is it the homeowners association that would be responsible for maintaining the green areas, as you refer to them, the public areas, or would that be done through the assessment district?
No, that would be done through the homeowners association. But
the question that I had is concerning roads. Avenue 360, it showed, at least in the staff report, that you were going to go just the length of the property. I believe it's west of 220.
Mm-hmm.
Would there be any opposition to going from 220 all the way to 212?
We've discussed that. We haven't had any opposition in going out as far as necessary.
Okay.
I know that there is laws out there regarding the nexus of the property and how much it relates to that. Again, we've never had any opposition to doing whatever necessary to make sure that.
The only reason that I bring that up is just because it looks like the main access is going to be 212 to that property, so that's why I would bring that up.
We would be willing to do whatever necessary to make sure that access is provided to the property.
Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Sheehan.
Go ahead.
On your water use, I don't dispute that a family uses 1 acre foot of water for household needs, but have you calculated in the lawns, your green area, your park area, on the amount of water you need?
We have, and that has been calculated into the 1 acre foot. Like I said, the reports, even in the staff report, there's a report showing that at a max it uses 0.9 acre feet for a family of 5.
What does?
A family of 5 uses 0.9 acre feet. It doesn't use an entire acre foot of water a year at the max. We also have other reports showing 2.5. The lawn is included in that green area is included in that because, and that's what also boosts it up to 1 acre foot of water.
Okay, because I know from experience my lawn takes about 2.5 acre feet of water per acre of lawn, at least.
That's right, but if you look at the green areas here, you would have to divide that by 48, and that would increase it only.
Well, I'm talking about the individual 1 acre lots too. Mm-hmm. Unless there's CC&Rs restricting what type of vegetation that is on those 1 acre lots, you're going to find many of those lots are going to be planted to lawn.
We don't anticipate that all lots will put lawn over an entire acre and a half of property. That is a large amount of property to be putting lawn over. I mean, we're not going to irrigate the entire property. If need be, we can put the CC&Rs in order to mitigate the amount of water that's needed for the properties. If you look again at the Montgomery Ranch, and here's a great example of it. Montgomery Ranch, you have homes there that do not have a great deal of lawns there.
They don't have any water.
Well, we can do what's necessary to make sure that there is sufficient water for them. And again, we're talking about if you use the 4 wells, we're talking about 1,600 acre feet. Where is it? 1,600 acre feet of water produced by those 4 wells if need be.
Thank you.
I just had one. I see you got 17 wells on this site. Are some of these dry? Are they just?
Some of them are just not used. They were originally drilled over the past 28 years because the original intent was to put individual wells on the sites. Some of them may not produce as well as others. We've provided 4 that produce extremely well. To tell you the truth, I don't know if there's others that produce better or not, but we do have 4 here that do produce well.
Have you checked the water quality?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
BSK Laboratories has checked the water quality, and there are no issues at all with the water quality.
Any other questions? Thank you. Yes, come forward. Yes, please.
Good morning. My name is Everett Welch, and I live at 21248 Avenue 360, just west and adjacent to this proposed development. My family and all of the residents in that area, there's some 13, 14 homes, and all of us are against this project for various reasons. I've lived there for 65 of my 67 years. In the last 50, I've been aware of the water. We farmed 40 acres there since the early 1900s. We've abandoned 40 acres of citrus due to lack of water. The reason he has 17 wells is they drill a well, it goes dry, they drill a well, it goes. Why would you have 17 wells on 100 acres? And that area has been historically very, very low on water. I've handed you a photograph today. I'm sorry I didn't have a PowerPoint presentation. I took this on a hill west of the project. I've drawn an outline as close as I could to the project, which shows the pristine, you'll see vernal pools in the foreground there. It's just an absolute pristine area. I've lived there. My family homesteaded that valley, and we just hate to see this project go through. With regards to the use of water, each of those 2.5 acres, 2 acres, 1 acre, they're going to have a horse, a cow, or something, or they're going to plant a garden, and the water usage will be much more than 0.9 acre feet. I've looked at the internet, I've studied that. Those studies come from urban use, which the yards are much smaller, but I can assure you that everyone, the reason they're going to live there is because they want to have a horse, a cow, or a garden, or even trees, or they may even keep the olive trees. So the usage is going to be much more than that. There have been wells drilled in the neighborhood past year. At least 40 acres of olives that I'm aware of have been abandoned due to lack of water. I've abandoned a well. There was a well drilled just west of me, and they got 8 gallons a minute. It's just been a tough water area. In regards to the traffic, yes, they're going to improve the road, the eastern end of 360 and 220. However, the access, Road 212 from Woodlake to Avenue 360 is a one-lane road, no white line. Once you turn on 360 heading east, it is a 14-foot road. And to pass, you have to get off on the shoulder. And it's dangerous in the winter when it's wet, and it's dangerous in the summer. The bridges are narrow. So there are more issues than just the roads at the project itself. And the last thing, if you notice on the very edge of the map, I've drawn a line and some posts. That is Mr. Ishida is aware of this. That is the Southern California Cross Valley Loop. Mr. Ishida and others have been active in helping us to move the Southern California Edison crossover line north to Alternative 3. We have just heard that it's going to take Alternative 2, and it goes right through that valley. And there will be some 8 towers just north of the proposed project, my home, which is in the foreground there, and they're going to be drilling 60-foot holes for the towers, and we're concerned about more water issues, blocking the stratas that we currently have. And so anyway, that's just another something we're going to have to deal with. I thank you for your time and consideration. If you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer them.
Thank you, Mr. Wells. Morning, sir.
Good morning. My name is Greg Schwaller, Three Rivers. I'm speaking on behalf of Karen Bodner, who could not be here today. She's one of the members of the Executive Committee of Tulare County Citizens for Responsible Growth. I'm going to paraphrase from her email, which you're receiving. The 7 findings that the staff report identified as being, quote, required for denial are found in Section 66474 of the Subdivision Map Act. But by advising the board that, quote, the legislative body of a city or county shall deny approval of a tentative map only if it makes any of the following findings, unquote, the staff report completely reverses the meaning of Section 66474. The words "only if" do not appear in the statute. They were inserted by staff. The statute clearly does not say, as staff reports, that you cannot deny a subdivision application unless you make at least one of the 7 listed findings. There's a copy in your packet of 66474. To read the statute as staff has would severely and unreasonably limit local government's discretion and divest it of control over its own local planning decisions, which is contrary to a substantial body of state law. Staff apparently undertook its, quote, further review and evaluation of the applicant's proposed subdivision on its own volition, or perhaps at the urging of the applicant, and then relied on a misreading of the law to decide on its own that the thorough multi-year process in which your planning commission engaged before denying this application and the input of numerous other county residents are outweighed by the individual applicant's desire to convert his productive agricultural land into a housing tract outside of any designated urban development area. You should disagree. The Commission's denial is thorough, well-reasoned, and well-documented. The Commission has carried out its responsibilities to both the applicant and the county, including county residents other than the applicant, fairly and well. Staff's analysis also fails to consider that the studies on which applicant relies to show available water and traffic impacts were based on a proposed 37 houses, but the application and the plan proposes 48, an increase of almost 30% over the studies. It appears the applicant's studies do not accurately reflect the impact the subdivision will have on all environmental and social elements. And finally, staff's recommendation is inconsistent with the county's stated preference that new development avoid creating isolated pockets of urbanization. The proposed subdivision is located outside any urban development area, remote from existing services, and without any proposed services inherent in the development. Residents will be totally automobile dependent for basic needs, groceries, schools, employment, etc. This board should not second guess its planning commission. I respectfully but strongly urge you to uphold the commission's decision. Karen Bodner. Thank you.
Good morning.
My name is Bonnie Welch, and I have lived in Antelope Valley for approximately 42 years. I am on Site 13, which is directly west of Mr. Redfield's proposal. As it has been mentioned, there are, in all this time, only about 13 or 14 residents that have been developed in this area, and one of the absolute main reasons is, besides property ownership, is the lack of water. Ever since I've lived there, we have had to deal with the lack of water. I'm on my second well. I just put in a third pump the other day, about 3 weeks ago. Everyone here that is opposed, or everyone here of the 14 residences, has also experienced this water situation. And this was even before all of the olive production was developed. This was when it was all native pasture and cattle, and only a few places had oranges. By the end of the summer, even those places were having to cut seriously back on their water. A lot of our wells were very shallow. My first well was 55 feet. It has since come back. I use it for the house. Just to carry in as drinking water. I've had to drill another well, which is over 300 feet deep. When I first drilled it, it was before any of the olives had gone into production. I got 75 gallons a minute, which was far more than I needed for my 10 acres, which I keep in native pasture. I have large yards, no lawn, and I have horses on that. Since the development of the olives, since they become mature, my water table, according to Willits, who is my pump man, has gone down to about 20 gallons per minute that it will pump if I run it consistently. Of which I don't, I store it up. Okay, but we have some other issues, and it does have to do with the fact that right now, these 14 residences, and I'm sorry, I don't have a map other than your site map, we are spread out anywhere from 1/8 of a mile to a mile apart from one another. And I think I mentioned that, okay, I'll go on that, so I've already mentioned that. We all use Avenue 360. We come from Woodlake, or we can come Sentinel Butte to Avenue 360, and then we travel along that. And it is very skinny. If you have 2 cars, you pull over. If you have a truck and a car, you definitely pull over. Somebody's on the dirt. If it's 2 trucks, horse trailers, we have horse trailers coming up there. We have waste management. It's a dangerous situation. The road is not maintained. In the 42 years I've lived there, it's only been patched in the last 10 years 3 times. 2 of those were, believe me, patches over potholes. Then we had our bridge, which is close to the junction of Avenue 360 and 212. Our bridge almost washed out. They actually closed the road to patch the bridge, and they just patched it. It's no wider, it's just a little stronger. It's just a road over a culvert. They closed the road so that we could not go in or out for a day or so. That bridge would definitely have to be improved. The whole road 360 would have to be improved. And these are the reasons why. If his proposal goes through, we are now going to add 48 new residences to the 14 existing ones. But all of them will use Avenue 360. And that will be, after development, a lot of traffic because we have to go into Woodlake or Visalia or whatever for all services. We provide our own water. We do have, of course, electricity, a lot of power poles. How many more power poles are we going to have besides the ones that we have running the wells out there for 48 new homes? Now, in the actual development of these sites, think of the traffic we're going to have, especially if this road is in the existing condition that it's in. We're going to have trucks that are carrying road graders, backhoes, septic tank components, rock trucks, cement trucks, you name it. And then after these homes are completed, we're going to have service vehicles. And one of our biggest concerns on that is waste management. Currently, they come up the road 3 times a week, twice on Tuesdays for various, container dumping. And then I have a dumpster, of which many have, and so they come up on Thursdays for that. How many more trips or how many more trucks will we put on to now service 62 residents, as opposed to our current 14. The leach lines, the septic tank lines, that does concern us because right now we are spread out from one another, and my leach line in no way affects any of my neighbors, etc. He's talking about putting a concentrated area there. No one has guaranteed us that there would not be contamination in the shallower stratus, such as my 55-foot well. Because I live, you can see on 13, I'm just right there. If we had that picture, I could actually show it to you. Okay. And he did show some great pictures of other developments, such as in Springville. We know they have water problems also. He did not show us what a mobile home park would look like, if that's what's established there. So that is a concern. In closing, I would just like to say that all of us that are here in opposition know that this proposal would not enhance the beauty of Antelope Valley. It would destroy the very reasons all of us have decided to live there and stay there for 40, 50, 60 or more years. It's because it's private, it's quiet, and we are independent people. We don't, we get along without city services. We know how to do it. We don't have natural gas. We don't have water or sewer systems that we'll ever be able to depend on. We have to depend on, finding it ourselves. So, in closing, I hope that you will deny this. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
I just have to take this opportunity to make a comment. This is the first time I've seen Mrs. Welch since high school. She was one of my high school biology teachers, and I have to say the situation's a little bit different. All my classmates are a little older this time around, but it's sure nice to see you.
Always got to make the age statement.
My name is Ken Sorensen, and I own the Olive Grove at the corner of Avenue 360 and 220. My concerns, I'm just a farmer, I'm not a lawyer, and any of those good things. My concern is financial. I'm running a business of 50 acres of olives, and this would put me on two sides. My concerns would be noise, my liabilities, and it's not realistic to believe that 48 homes there, that the people wouldn't be riding their ATVs through my property, their kids would be running through my property, or busting my lines, or whatever. And where's my liability on that with all that activity around? I still believe in farming for California. I think olive trees are beautiful. I personally, I don't have a problem with water like the other folks do, but I will tell you, my well is 1,600 feet deep. Now, if everybody else wants to dig a well down that deep, they may get some water, but other than that, all around me, People are suffering for water, and I don't care what kind of numbers you use. Reality is, these folks lived here for 60 years, and you know what? They've lived real life, and that's all I'm trying to do is make a living out of farming. So I'd ask you that you reject this property.
Nice screen, man.
Morning, Mr. Gordon.
Good morning. I'm James Gordon, 24740 Avenue 324, Lemon Cove. The name spelled Gorden. Mr. Chairman and members of the board and staff, thank you for allowing me to talk about this project today. I've attended two, at least, of the previous Planning Commission hearings with regard to this project, and I would say that notwithstanding improvements that the applicant has made, this is still not the type of development project that we need in this area of Tulare County today. It's inconsistent with surrounding development. It destroys productive farmland. Whether or not it's zoned as farmland, it is farmland, and most of it's either prime or a land that's classified by the Department of Conservation as farmland of statewide importance. It's outside any development boundaries. It's an energy-hungry, expensive project for the county to service. I was impressed with the data that was presented in the staff report supporting the water quality and quantity. I would just tell you that I drilled a well a few years ago in an area similar, and gosh, I was all excited. You know, we got, I don't remember how many gallons a minute, so we put a pump in it, pumped it for about 5 days. After 5 days pumping, we had less than 4% of the yield that the initial tests indicated. I suspect there may be some of these same sorts of situations existing in this area. There are no sustained yield tests that are shown in the staff report. More troubling and embarrassing to me is the misstatement of law that's contained in the staff report supporting this proposal. And Mr. Chairman, I think you and the staff and your board should also be embarrassed by this misuse of the law. I hope it's accidental. I hope that. Let me just close by saying I think the Planning Commission got it right. I'd urge that your board uphold their decision. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Morning.
Good morning. My name is Scott Spear, Chairman of the Board of Sequoia Riverlands Trust. I'll direct my comments specifically at two very important resources in Tulare County. One is disappearing farmland, prime farmland, and the man just before me mentioned that it is certainly, at least of the farmland quality, is of statewide importance, and the most precious resource that we do have, and it is under pressure in this county, and that is water. And you're all familiar with the foothill water problems all along the foothills in the fractured rock sort of aquifer. They're being drawn down and can't be replaced, and there is the whole issue of what if there is climate change and how will that recharge work. The Land Trust has a farmland protection program, which I'm involved in, and we all know how fast our prime ag land is disappearing. So rather than speak to or in opposition to the project, I speak more specifically to the resources that are challenged in this particular project. Thank you.
Morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and Supervisors. My name is Lori Schwaller. I live at 43857 South Fork Drive in Three Rivers, and I am a member of Tulare County Citizens for Responsible Growth. I would like to ask the board to consider the fact that this has been going on for 17 months. There have been many hearings, and as far as I know, no one other than the proponent of this project and his attorney has ever spoken in favor of it. Everyone else that you have heard from, including residents of the area who have been there for decades, have opposed this project. I would like you to consider the larger issues that are at stake here. The applicant has shown you pictures of other developments and has talked about how this would be similar. Indeed, if we keep looking at these precedents, we will soon have no farmland and no water. The regional blueprint has asked us all to think on a larger scale. We recognize that our problems with air quality, with loss of farmland, with water supply are regional. They are affecting us very strongly, and particularly in Tulare County. The county has looked at development densities and has said that it knows that it must improve in that area. This is proposed for 0.44 units per acre. The county is now committed to an average of over 5 units per acre. The Foothill Growth Management Plan, with which this development is not compatible, and you know that the law does not in any way require you to approve it. It shows you findings which would require you to deny. It is your discretion to approve based on what is appropriate for the health, safety, and welfare of the residents, for quality of life in this county, for your responsibilities to the region and our future. This type of development is not in accordance with those conditions. The Foothill Growth Management Plan talks about clustered development that preserves open space. It talks about innovative development. There is no need for the proposed development. If you have driven out in this area, you know that it is entirely incompatible with the surroundings. You know that the roads are ridiculous. The developer does not say that he will be maintaining those roads outside the development. The county currently has enormous difficulty maintaining its roads. The requirements of AB 32 and SB 375, state law, require the kind of development that is efficient, economical, transit-friendly, walkable. We have got to get people out of their cars. This type of development is not for people who are working on the land that they live on. For everything that they need to do day to day, they have to get into their cars and drive to Woodlake at the closest. Many of them will go, of course, much farther. It is incumbent on the proponent to show why this development should be approved. When you look at the big picture, when you look at our future, when you look at the impact on quality of life in this area, when you look at the housing needs of Tulare County, when you look at the health, safety, and welfare of our citizens, with clinics closing, with roads that we can't maintain, why do we not focus on putting new development of this type where jobs, services, infrastructure already exist? Our public
Smaller.
services
Are
are
you able to-
already,
Can you finish your comments? We have a 3-minute clock, and
Yes,
I'll let you go about a
sorry.
minute beyond that. So you could-
our public services are already very much strained, and this type of development will only strain them and the taxpayers further. Therefore, I ask you to uphold the Planning Commission's sound decision and deny this development. Thank you.
I have just a few minutes just to address the concerns that have been raised. The greatest concerns that have been raised, or the ones that have been raised the most often, have been water and the roadways. You've heard from several people who have said that they have had to abandon wells, or that their wells have gone dry. You also heard from one resident of the area, Mr. Sorensen, who said that he had no problems with his wells because they were deep enough. That is what Mr. Redfield has done on his property since the very beginning. Not one of those 17 wells have gone dry. I just verified that with Mr. Redfield right now. None of them have ever gone dry. They have been drilled up to 800 feet. They have gone down to where there is water. They've been able to break that granite seal underneath where most wells do not get underneath, and they've been able to get to where there is plentiful water for the property. As for the roads, most of the statements that have been talking about the condition of the roads, they talk about the condition of the roads as they are right now. And as we've said, we have always been willing to upgrade the roads so that they would provide adequate access for this property. In talking about the taking away of farmland, if you'll allow me to pull up this zoning map again. In fact, if you look on page 11 of the packet I handed you, when I showed the zoning map, you'll notice that the Foothill Growth Management Plan is designed so that farmland is not taken away. If Mr. Redfield were to wait until Woodlake had grown all the way to his property, which sits right up here, actually it's just right there. If you were to wait till it grew all the way up there, you would be taking away all the farmland in between there. The Foothill Growth Management Plan is designed so that this good farmland is maintained. The only farmland that's being taken away is Mr. Redfield's himself. You've also heard people talk about how they enjoy the aesthetic beauty of the area. Well, the large lots are designed so that it won't take away from other people's aesthetic beauty, but it also allows other people to come in and partake of this aesthetic beauty. It almost sounds as if some people want to keep that for themselves without sharing it with others. Again, with the water, one of the greatest pieces of evidence that there is sufficient water is that those olives have been maintained plentifully ever since they were planted in 1984. In fact, we had one person talk about how James Gordon said that I believe it's James Gordon, maybe it was, I can't remember, maybe it was Ms. Welch, said that, here it is, Ms. Welch stated that her water supply began to run out after the olives were planted. Well, the olives require more water than an individual residence does, especially a sparsely populated subdivision like this. And finally, like I said before, Mr. Redfield purchased this property in 1982 when it was zoned for development at that time. He had the rights at that time to develop his property. The laws give the board guidelines to deny it if he doesn't meet those requirements. However, if he does meet those requirements, then he should have the right to develop the property as he has always intended. Otherwise, you begin taking property rights away from Mr. Redfield, property rights that he purchased 28 years ago. He does have this right to develop the property, and all we have tried to do this entire time is resolve issues that prohibit him from developing there. Again, I ask that you uphold our appeal and that you overturn the Planning Commission's findings for denial. And again, I thank you for your time.
Anybody else wishing to address this morning? Then we'll, yes, sir.
Board, Ben Kimball, RMA Planning. Just wanted to point out that the issue of the homeowners association maintaining the roadway was not previously brought up, and that may be a good enough reason to refer it back to the Planning Commission for further consideration. So we want to recommend that.
I'm not sure that that's, excuse me, what Mr. Boyd said earlier. I understood there was going to be an assessment district to maintain the roadway, and the homeowners association would maintain what he refers to as the green areas, the common. Is that correct?
That's correct.
But that was not what had been presented before to the planning
Presented
commission.
before the Planning Commission, in the Planning Commission staff report, that the homeowners association would maintain the common greenway, but there was no inclusion or discussion about the maintenance of the roads themselves. Perhaps they meant the areas in the public right-of-way adjacent to the roads, like you would have landscaping or walls, but that was not mentioned.
Question, so they did not see Exhibit A then? That was not part of the Planning Commission's packet, Exhibit A, number 11? The pages were numbered, I'd tell you what page, but Exhibit A, number 11.
Where is it?
I'm trying to find it, sorry.
It's about 7 or 8 pages in from the front of my report.
Mr. Chairman, if that is the resolution that was prepared by RMA staff for your board's consideration today.
That's why I asked the question.
Was that before the planning
If the Planning Commission saw this, can he answer that?
I'll have to compare it. Actually, I'll bring in an expert witness in my state.
And I would have one question for you too.
Let's do one first, then we'll talk about another question.
Yes, this condition has been a standard from the very beginning since this project was presented to the Planning Commission. It is a standard condition in terms of the assessment district being formed to maintain the roads within the subdivision. The added thing, which was, I wasn't at the last Planning Commission meeting, I did not present this, but was the homeowners association to maintain the open areas of the site. I'm not sure about that one, but the assessment district condition for maintaining the roads was part of the original Planning Commission resolution.
Is it clear then what is before us today? Is that any different today than what was before the Planning Commission?
I wasn't at the last Planning Commission, but the site plan that you have today was presented to the Planning Commission with all of these conditions that you see in there today in your resolution. The only added condition would be for the homeowners association to maintain the open spaces of the site.
All right.
And I would just ask for clarification. I don't know if this would be Ben or you, Charlotte. It was referred to in some of the comments that were made during the public hearing. Were there any erroneous statements of the statutes or legislation?
No, the
Mr. Chairman, if I could, I'd prefer that discussions regarding legal representations be made in closed session. This matter is on close.
Yeah. And I was going to say, too, because of a public comment that was made by Mr. Gordon, these issues, the legal issues, were raised. I found that in my spam filter this morning. As far as I know, this is the first time this has been raised. So this idea that somehow the county has misstated the law and that we are responsible as the Board of Supervisors, this is the first time this issue has been raised, and it was raised this morning for the very first time. And that's why I was going to request that as our board, we will go into council in our closed session to talk about this legal issue.
And this is
I do find it somewhat unsettling that a comment would be made like that somehow this board is trying to manipulate the law in a way it's not intended. That was not the case.
On your board's closed session agenda is item A.
We're going to leave the public hearing open.
Or do you want
No, we
to
closed the public hearing. I already closed it because there was no more public comments.
Yes.
Well, I saw it.
Oh, how are you?
But it was close to 100.
Sorry.
Back in session. Had a chance to meet with our legal counsel, and what is the pleasure of the board at this time?
Well, I think there have been some significant questions that have been raised. One, I think water is a very critical issue that needs to be addressed, and beyond the study that has been done already, I think that what needs to be done is it needs to look at the sustainability of the water over a period of time so that you don't find yourself in a situation like these property owners that have had wells at a certain depth for a certain period of time and then had to find themselves going deeper and deeper and deeper just to maintain themselves on the lot. So I think that we need to do something to analyze that water before we approve this or send this forward, so that we can come up with some basis for our decision.
Okay.
The other issue that came up was the circulation issue.
Traffic circulation.
Not only just around the immediate property, is the approach to the property. The roads, the road conditions beyond the property may need to be studied and figured out how we can mitigate the effects of the increased traffic.
Well, of course, my concern too would be the water. You know, we brought up the Montgomery Ranch and the Triple R area up in Springville area, and the big concern up there is lack of water, shortage of water, using 500 to 550 gallons per minute and actually producing about 340. So these home sites, people tend to want to use a lot of water. Even with a lion's share sliding scale, they'll still try to irrigate over half their property. So that's the thing that bothers me most about these subdivisions out like that, is the water. Water's the number one concern for me.
Jeff, I might just say one thought that came to my mind is they were the pictures that were shown of these lush green central areas. In my mind, as we look at any kind of development in the foothill management plan, I would tend to think of more of drought-resistant native vegetation type of things that don't require much irrigation, perhaps water to get established, but then after that would not require irrigation or very little of it. And also CCNRs to deal with the issue that was raised by Mr. Ishida of instead of growing lawn on 1.5 acres of ground, I don't know why anybody would want to do that, but having CCNRs that would address these issues so that there could be protection against the use of water that's really not necessary in this area. So anything else by the members?
No.
I think then what we would like to do is have this matter referred back to the Planning Commission to specifically concentrate on those particular issues. And what I heard was traffic circulation as it relates to the access to the property from Avenue 360, I believe, is the issue. Water sustainability, whether or not we have testing that shows the sustainability of the water supply. We know the water quality is good. We know the water supply is good at an instant, whether or not sustainable. And then adoption of CCNRs regarding the lots themselves and the green areas, the common areas.
So I move that we refer this back to the Planning Commission.
I'll second that.
A motion by Mr. Ishida, seconded by Mr. Ennis. Any further discussion? Please cast your votes. Votes are for an approval of the motion and one nay by Cox, so the motion is approved. Matters referred back. Do you want to say anything, Mr. Cox?
Nope.
Okay. All right. And that will take us now to our untimed items. And I'm trying to find my agenda here. It's buried someplace. Item 71.
That's some quickies on here.
Good morning again.
Good morning again.
I'm Rita Woodard, the County ATR. We're here today to ask for approval for the issuance of a line of credit with Union Bank of California for up to $55 million. We believe that the line of credit, the LOC, is the best cash management tool for the county for dry period financing at this time. For the last several years, we have issued tax revenue anticipation notes, TRANS, instead, but there are three reasons for that: is market risk, flexibility, and longevity. PFM gave you an idea of the market conditions today, and in the past, issuing a TRAN that we could reasonably expect to do, but there are fewer sellers and buyers, and it puts the county at a risk of not having cash when needed if we go for a TRAN at this time. The line of credit will provide a stable source of cash in these uncertain times. The TRAN also has, they've changed the rules for issuances on that, and there's substantially less allowed to be borrowed, and there's more detailed documentation needed for it. So a lot more work, a lot more money, and not as much available. Flexibility, the line of credit is better suited as a cash smoothing tool than a TRAN. County revenues are periodic, such as December 10, April 10 for property taxes, where the expenses are ongoing, like bi-weekly payroll, monthly welfare checks. So because of the current situation with the state of California and their budget, we have to be able to handle these swings in cash as they come and go. We don't know what we're going to have July 1 even, so that's why I'm here today. We will be coming back on July 13th to finalize this for signatories, and after council reviews it, we had another draft received last Friday, and we're in negotiations to get the cost down more. So, but we wanted approval of something today so we can be in place if July 1 happens and the state sticks us to it again. Longevity is the issuance of the TRAN is 1 year. The line of credit, we can renew on 30-day notice to roll it over. The issuance cost is one time. For the larger amounts for line of credit, it could be like less than $5,000 for the second year for the issuance costs of it. So there's a lot of advantages to it. It's just a cash management tool that we could use or not use.
Rita, the thing I was wondering about, you're indicating that the cost of borrowing money for the line of credit will cost the county anywhere from $100,000 to $500,000.
That's correct.
What is that? How does that compare with the use of the TRANs? What does it cost? I know there's a cost. What does that cost run?
It's comparable. TRANs are a completely different vehicle, and depending on market conditions, in the past we have actually made money on TRANs because we would reinvest it. And this time of market, we can't reinvest it. We're using it at times when we don't need it, so we would need it. And it's hard to say. It could be the same, it could be less, though, because we aren't going to use it. If we only need $10 million, instead of, when we go out for a TRAN, we would go out for a TRAN for $55 million and have to pay the interest the whole year. For the line of credit, we only use it, borrow $10 million, have it for a short period of time, pay it back, borrow $20 million, have it for a short period.
I guess to try to get apples to apples, oranges to oranges, assuming right now we were comparing going out to a TRANS, that you're going to have, we know that when you borrow that money, you borrow it all at one time.
Mm-hmm.
You have to pay, there's a cost of issuance, there's a cost of interest on that amount of money. To borrow, to look at what do we normally spend on that? I mean, you're saying we can something arbitrage that and turn around and we borrow the whole thing out at 2% and lend it out at 3% or something like that. I don't know what we've been doing, but there still is a cost of issuance.
Yes.
What does that normally run?
It can run $200,000 or so, but there's sometimes a premium we get back depending. It just depends on the market. And right now in our calculations, this was a cheaper way to go for this year.
Mr. Chair.
We could come back in a few months and say we'd rather go for a TRAN now and stop using the line of credit, depending on the market
But
conditions.
we would have incurred this expense of $100,000 to $500,000 setting up the line of credit.
Setting it up is less than $100,000.
If I can speak to this item, the auditor staff has ran numbers for both TRAN and the line of credit. As she indicated, the TRAN is an upfront borrowing. There's a certain cost associated with that. The interest rate that we would be paying is very comparable to the TRAN. Where we're going to save money is we won't necessarily have to borrow it all up front. We can borrow it as we need it. And secondly, the cost of issuance is significantly cheaper with a line of credit than it is with the TRAN. And just to remind you, not this year but the year before, our TRAN underwriter ratings went down. We had to bring the TRAN in and try to invest it, and we had a heck of a time with that. First time that it's happened in my career. and hopefully it'll never happen again. So this is
Hopefully.
a cheaper way. We're working with our bank. This is a bank we do banking services with,
Yes,
correct?
it is, and that's why it was cheaper than going with others. We did check with other banks, though, on the costs, and it was cheaper than, we still are in negotiations.
Yeah.
So we're trying
They
to get it
provide a lot
less.
of services. They're sitting on a lot of our money, and we can leverage that to reduce the fees. But the bottom line is the cost of issuance is significantly cheaper with the line of credit, and we might not need to borrow the entire $55 million,
Right.
which would reduce our borrowing costs.
And
It's hard to
your
quantify.
borrowing would be as you need it. So
That's
if you-
correct.
If you you need a small amount now, and then that's all you're paying interest on.
Yes, and next year, then, the issuance cost would be $5,000 or less.
Yeah.
If we,
I'm sorry,
if we-
Pete.
once it's in
My
place.
question for you, Rita, would be one of just, we RFP everything we do. You said you've asked a couple of different banks. I just want to make sure that we're getting the best bang for our buck and the best rate that we're going to have to pay should we borrow the money.
Yes, we negotiate very well.
Okay. So what is the action that you need from us today?
Need you
Are we
to
prepared
approve
are we prepared to
the,
approve the resolution?
approve the resolution to issue the line of credit to Union Bank so that I can have some cash in here July 1 if I need it.
So moved.
All right, we have a motion by Mr. Cox, seconded by Mr. Ennis. Please cast your votes. Votes are unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate
Brings
it.
to item number 72, request from Resource Management Agency to allow the ministerial approval of building permits on land subject to code compliance agreement or special use permits. Good morning.
Good morning, almost afternoon. My name is Amy Lizarraga, and I'm with the Resource Management Agency. And again, the request before you is that the Board of Supervisors allow the ministerial approval of building permits on land subject to a code compliance agreement or a special use permit. And really, the purpose of this item before you is to really streamline our permitting process, making it more efficient, by which we can make our department more efficient in some of the permitting that we do, as well as providing that benefit to the constituency in the county that has use permits. Of course, the special use permit process, the amendment to the special use permit process, and minor modifications would stay in place, but the purpose of this is really to make the distinction between physical improvements that would make a more efficient operation versus an increase in use. So if it's something, for example, someone who has a use permit that needs just additional storage space, more parking, shade structures, things along those lines that would not create an increase in the use itself, then they can just go through with the building permit, again, making it more efficient and increasing a faster flow of revenue for the county in building permits. So just really simply stated, again, we're trying to make our permitting process more efficient, and that is the request before the board today.
Question, Mr.
I just have one instance that I had to deal with that this would fall under this umbrella. I had a constituent who needed to build a home or build an extra room onto his home to accommodate his in-laws that were coming from Portugal to stay there. But because he had a code compliance violation on the dairy where his property was located, he could not build that room. So even though it was completely unrelated, he couldn't do that because of that. And I think what this does is it addresses it and helps to streamline it because it does not intensify the use of the property. So
Correct.
I support this fully, and I thank you for bringing this forward. I had motion for approval.
Question, Mr. Cox?
Before there's the second, that's the same reason I would oppose it, is because the only stick you have is to fix your code compliance issue, and then you can get a building permit to do other things, and sometimes they need to get a building permit to fix their code compliance issue. So I'm just hoping we're not throwing the baby out with the bathwater here, because there are times when the only stick we have to, for a property owner to get a building permit is to fix what's already wrong. And if we allow them to get a permit to do other stuff, they can continue to ignore what was wrong. And as we've seen on this board, sometimes that takes years before it gets to our level.
I think
my only concern.
I don't think that was the intent.
No. And again, that's kind of where we're making the distinction. Again, use permits run with the land. So if you have a single-family residence on land with, say, a dairy, if there's code compliance issues on the residence itself, then yes, they would have to rectify those before they can pull a building permit. But if there's issues, say, with that use, but there's a home on the site and they need, say, a re-roof or something along those lines, we don't want to do anything that would impede that from going forward. We'd separate out the issues. So one is an operational thing, the other is the use.
I understand.
Mr. Ennis?
Well, I think these are the type of things so that you go out and pick up. People don't get a permit. They'll add a carport on, they'll build a barn on their property. If you get it and make it easy, then they'll go in and they'll be legal, they'll get the permits they need, and they'll do it right. But there's so much of this going on in our county right now where they just go ahead and build a carport, or they build something on their property in these areas, and they don't pay a permit. So
I think the intent here too is to use judicious discretion on the part of your staffing people, because the idea, I know of concept situation too, when you talk about sometimes bringing things into compliance, let's take a dairy for instance, that may be a multi-year, multi-million-dollar process. And I remember an example in my district where the dairyman was in the process of doing that, and then he had an opportunity to do $1 million solar project on his dairy. And we ran into this problem because he couldn't come into compliance, and yet here was an opportunity to do something that was really going to make, as you say, his operation more efficient. It was a good project. There was no reason to stop it, and it wasn't like the person wasn't trying to comply. It was just that coming into compliance can be a multi-year, multi-million-dollar process. So I think it was an example of, we need to have that discretion. It's not where you use it, as you're concerned about, Mr. Cox, of just, having a blind eye towards getting things done. But there are times and opportunities when it's appropriate to be able to do this. And I
Sure,
think
you're right. I'm thinking about the guy that has a pile of
That's that
garbage
city.
a mile and a
That's the
half.
city guy.
That's not the city guy.
Well, I think the issue came up too because we have special use permits, and I'm going to point out a dairy, for instance, that they're adding structures, but they're not adding capacity.
Right.
And we've been hung up for many, many months under a special use, changing their special use permit when all they need is a darn building permit. So I think this really gets rid of the backlog.
We had a motion.
Okay, I'm convinced.
We had a motion by Mr. Vanderpool and a second by Mr. Ishida. Please cast your vote. And we convinced Mr. Cox. We've got 5-0. Thank you very much. Okay. And that will bring us to item number 73, request the Resource Management Agency to approve the application of PZI 09-003.
Good morning, Supervisors. Almost afternoon. Jason LeBeau, RMA Planning. The project before you today is a PZI 09003, and that is a zone change initiation in Kennedy Meadows. The applicants are Virginia Shemansky and Charles and Tina Thomas. The request before your board today is to approve an application that would allow the applicant to proceed with the zone change, and that zone change application would be for a change from MR 217, which is mountain residential, 217,000 square feet minimum, to commercial recreation. The project description and Fred Weber, the agent for the applicant, is here today if your board would like a more detailed description. But the project description is, again, to change that zoning from MR 217, that mountain residential, to commercial recreation. And the applicant is wanting to have commercial storage. With that, there would be various items with the business left there on the site. It actually covers 4 different parcels, which I will get to in a minute with the maps. The land use designation is currently Mountain Commercial Opportunity Area under the Kennedy Meadows Plan, and this will stay the same. And that's why it is a zone change initiation. The subject site is located just off Kennedy Meadows Road in the Kennedy Meadows Plan, as you can see. There's the site. It's 4 parcels. It's approximately 20.36 acres. The zoning map shows the surrounding properties are zoned commercial recreation directly to the south, and the site itself is mountain residential, 217,000 square feet minimum, and as well some A1 and other mountain residential with the higher square minimum footage. Neighboring properties around there are a mix of mountain residential, and I believe the Grumpy Bear is directly to the south. And the aerial kind of shows you the existing area. Goman Avenue is directly to the south. This was the land use designation map I was referring to at the beginning of my presentation, and it shows that the subject site is in a mountain commercial opportunity area. And that mountain residential as well as the commercial recreation are both consistent with that. As well, the circle directly south of the site is a commercial node. Staff findings for this project, again, this is not for the zone change itself, it's for approval for the applicant to apply for a zone change. Staff looked into the Kennedy Meadows sub-area plan, and there's a section that has commercial implementation strategies, and this will be expanded upon later on during the zone change application process. But a preliminary review shows that the site does meet the access requirements because it has access to Goman Avenue and Kennedy Meadows Road. And the second is properties can be developed without creating conflicts of use within existing or adjacent parcels. This is again shown from the surrounding commercial recreation directly to the south, as well as the surrounding mountain residential zoning and the land use. 3, the property will fulfill a need for a demonstrated demand for additional commercially designated land. This will be expanded upon later on during the zone change process, but as of right now, under the commercial recreation zone, there are certain types of operations and uses that you could do that do differ from mountain residential. Mountain residential zoning does limit what you can do commercially, and the applicant has indicated that they do want to store some items on the site, and that is able to be done with the special use permit process through a commercial recreation. 4, water can be made available for domestic and firefighting purposes based on water specifications provided by the health and fire departments. The health department had no comment on this project, and staff did not receive any comment from the fire department. Again, they will have the chance when a clearer project description is available during the zone change process. And lastly, the general plan 2030 update. With that, there is a new set of land use designations. This would be consistent with that, both the zoning and the use, because of the commercial recreation. That is indicated in the general plan update. And again, just to summarize options before your board, the staff recommendation today is that your board approve the change of zone initiation, allowing the applicant to apply for a zone change, and it's PZI 09003 Szymanski-Thomas. And that change would be from mountain residential 217,000 square feet to commercial recreation. The second option would be to refer to the Planning Commission, but this project, if this is approved today by your board, will, as part of the zone change process, go before the Planning Commission and then to your board. The third option is to deny the project. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. LeBout. Any questions? None? Okay.
Move for approval.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Ennis, seconded by Mr. Vanderpool. Please cast your votes. Votes are unanimous in support. And that brings us to item number 74, General Plan Initiation, GPI 09-004.
Hello again. Again, my name is Emily Sarraga, and I'm with the Resource Management Agency, and I will be presenting General Plan Initiation GPI 09004. The applicant for this is Harlan Westbrook, and he is here today if you have any questions for the applicant. So again, the request is that the Board of Supervisors approve a General Plan Initiation to allow the applicant to proceed with a General Plan Amendment and zone change. And really what that project description would be is to expand the urban development boundary for the city of Tulare to include the 93.4 acre project site, change the land use designation from agricultural to residential and commercial, and rezone the project site from A20 to C3 and R1. The project site is located east of Enterprise Street, south of Tulare Avenue and north of State Highway 137, and just west of the city of Tulare. This is a diagram depicting the existing land use designation. As you can see, the project is currently designated as agriculture, and the existing zoning is AE20. This is an aerial of the project site. As you can see, there's various zones and land uses that surround the project site. To the north and east of the project site are the city of Tulare, and to the south and west is unincorporated county, developed with some scattered rural residential and agriculture. This is just another picture that depicts the same thing that I've just stated. You can see clearly the city of Tulare, as well as the existing urban development boundaries and urban area boundaries. And you can see that the project site is currently within the urban area boundary to the city of Tulare. Both of the parcels for the project site are within Williamson Act contracts. One of them has already filed for full non-renewal, and on the second parcel, it's currently pending. This really gets to the heart of what the applicant is proposing. Again, the proposed general plan and zoning would be to move the urban development boundary, where's the cursor, which currently travels along this way out to the outside of the project site, which then it would be within the urban development boundary, which then would lend itself to change the land use designation from agricultural to commercial and residential, and then to rezone the project site. This diagram here depicts how the applicant proposes to improve the site. He has been working with the city of Tulare, and this is actually a design that has been a compromise with those negotiations. So as you can see, there would be commercial along Tulare Avenue and State Highway 137, with the balance of the site in low-density residential. This parcel here, from what the applicant has stated, is a parcel of interest to the Tulare Union School District, and they're looking to have a school site at that site. Again, just for your information, this is what the project, once it would come forward as a general plan amendment, zone change, and eventually a development project, is what it might look like. A 9-phase development project, 30 acres of which would be commercial, 12 pad buildings, grocery store, biofuel station, and some restaurants, with 60 acres of residential that would be developed as single-family development, a worship facility, and a park that would also serve as a detention pond. In looking at the city of Tulare zoning ordinance, you can see where the project site is located, so it's right outside the city of Tulare. But you can see that to the north of the project site is single-family residential, as well as to the east. So as the city grows out, it would be compatible with existing development and future proposed development for the city of Tulare. This is a draft of the city of Tulare's general plan land use diagram. Again, it depicts the project site, and you can see that the city of Tulare is proposing that project site to be low-density residential. So the proposal is compatible with what the city of Tulare envisions as it grows out. The two county documents that would be applicable to this project would be the urban boundaries element, as well as a Rural Valley Lands Plan in an advisory capacity. And it's advisory here because it is within the urban area boundary. Some of the findings that would have to be made per these documents is that the city does not consent to annex a project, or that annexation is not possible under state law, but it is determined that development of the site does not constitute leapfrog or non-contiguous development. In this particular case, the applicant has started the process to annex to the city, but due to environmental issues with the city of Tulare's general plan, the city cannot make the appropriate CEQA findings. However, the county has determined that development of the site does not constitute leapfrog development or non-contiguous development, and is consistent with the city of Tulare's proposed 2030 general plan. The second finding would be that public service impacts of the development are within the service capabilities of the county and affected special district. And again, although the property cannot be annexed to the city at this time, the city has requested, and the applicant has agreed, that the county completely consent to annexation of the site in the near future, and that the county require the project to comply with city development standards, and that sewer and water be connected to the city system. Therefore, the county finds that the public service impact of the development are within the service capabilities of the county and affected special district, in this case, the city. And lastly, use and density proposed are determined to be consistent with the general plan of the county and compatible with the adopted general plan of the affected city. As I had showed you in previous slides, the proposed project does comply or is compatible with the City of Tullare's proposed general plan and how they see land uses as the city develops outward. Per the Rural Valley Lands Plan, we did a scoring, and the project actually scored a 21 above the 17, which if it was in the RVLP, it would not be permitted to be redesignated as non-agricultural. However, again, this is in the urban area boundary, so the RVLP scoring system here is used as an advisory capacity, just as a piece of information for your board to consider. And per the proposed General Plan 2030 policies, again, that urban development within UDBs of existing incorporated cities, and that we ensure that the surrounding properties around incorporated cities be developed in a way that as cities grow out, that the unincorporated areas are developed in a way that it's compatible with the cities for future annexations. So there's 3 options before you. Staff's recommendation, that the general plan initiation be approved so that the applicant may proceed with a general plan amendment. Due to the site being adjacent to the City of Tulare on 3 sides, urban development on 2 sides, and the City of Tulare's urban designation and willingness to annex the property could be considered available for development. The second option would be not to authorize the initiation, and the third would be to refer matters back to staff for further analysis. Sorry. Are there any questions?
Amy, my understanding is, in looking at the report, that the City of Tulare agrees with this process. They would otherwise have annexed the property, but because of their own issues with their general plan, and so this is not something done, and there's no antipathy here between the City of Tulare and the County of Tulare. This is we're actually helping them, assisting them get this accomplished. Is that correct?
And from my understanding, the applicant has been working with the city for the last 5 years. And again, the project that they have now is actually a product of the negotiations that have gone on with the city. So the city is in support of the project.
And I would just mention the only concern that I would have is that, obviously we're not dealing with the actual development of this parcel, just the initiation today of the zoning change and also the expansion of the UDB, I believe. I would just like to make sure that the general direction that we take is that it is built to city standards once it is developed.
I had a question. This project's in the county's UDB line for the city?
It's currently in the
outside.
county's UAB line.
UAB line.
The proposal is to change the boundary so that it be included into the urban development boundary.
Because we're currently working, negotiating with the cities for projects exactly like this inside the UABs, that anything inside the UABs, we would be asking for a share of the revenue associated with it. So I want to make sure this isn't being
if I
forgotten.
can, there's not going to be, there are no county impact. This would be a county project, and there are no building development fees as we sit here today, so there would be no revenue generated because of this.
I think what Mr. Rousseau is referring to is that as we look at the general plan and moving forward, the idea is that as we develop outside the city's UDBs, to the extent that there would be transient tax or sales tax, then there would be a tax sharing agreement with the cities. Right. This is all for housing. There was some commercial part of it too.
Majority of the site is residential, but there are commercial components to the project as well.
Okay, so is it possible to in this process to protect the county's interest as we move forward?
Well, I would like to do that. That's why I'm bringing it up.
Although it could, Mr. Chair, it could be reciprocal to where until such time as they move out and annex it, we could be sharing a piece of the sales tax back to the city, was part of the proposals that were on the table.
a number of issues. This is the first step in looking at the general plan initiation and rezoning. But my thoughts are certainly a development agreement is an appropriate tool to be required of this project as we move forward, and we can discuss many of these issues that we're negotiating with the cities at this time.
Thank you.
Mr. Sheedy?
Well, I have some issues with this project, and the issue I have is this is exactly what the city was accusing us of going to do in the future during our negotiations. Then all of a sudden, because the city wants to do this, it's okay. I have a real issue with that. And I also have a real issue with the fact that this is zoned agricultural land, and we're taking the applications to rezone it. And if you look at the scoring on the Valley Rural Lands Plan, it would not qualify. So, in essence, we're caught in a catch-22 to a degree when the city's been bad-mouthing us all this time about doing exactly one of these projects. Now they want us apparently to approve one of these projects because their general plan did not make considerations to include this project in their overall city vision of the UBDs.
I think the issue was more, if I'm not mistaken, that they didn't probably plan to have it, but their plan got thrown out by the court, so they're without the amended plan. I'm assuming the amended plan probably would have had this in their UDB. But because of the fact that their general plan was invalidated by the Court of Appeal, they are without a general plan as to this particular issue, and that's why it's being addressed in this fashion.
And from RMA staff perspective, this gives more validity to our previous negotiations with the cities in that we can assist them in moving forward with the type of developments that are compatible with their general plan. And therefore, further, our goal is to negotiate with the cities to enter into that MOU and to create a win-win situation both for the cities and the county. And so I think this is a positive step in that sense, but you're absolutely correct. That's what they have accused us of doing in the past. However, this does come to our benefit, I believe. So.
Well, it may come to our benefit, but I also see this as a way of the city of Tulare expanding outside their existing general plan, using us to do that expansion. And a general plan is a general plan. So we're being used as a vehicle to circumvent their general plan.
I would like to consider it mutually beneficial objectives.
Any other questions or comments? It is very interesting. Okay, entertain a motion?
I would move approval of this request.
I'll second that.
All right, motion by Mr. Vanderpool, seconded by Mr. Ennis, and I can guess what the vote's going to be like. Here they go.
Oh, no. She is casting 2 votes. He's so angry.
I think you want the no vote, right?
I want a no vote here.
Okay, so it's 4, the motion passes 4-1, the no vote cast by Mr. Ishida. Okay. And I think we all understand where he's coming from. Okay, that brings us to item number 75, a request from the Resource Management Agency to provide staff with policy direction regarding cost recovery on the establishment of land conservation easements administered by nonprofit organizations.
Yes, good morning, Chairman Worthley, members of the board and staff. Board members, before you...
You need to give us your name, Fred.
Fred Brusuelis with the planning branch of RMA. Thank you. The staff is asking you to consider one of the things that is foremost in our minds with the organization of RMA, and that is cost recovery, looking at our applications and services that we provide. Periodically, we receive requests to consider the establishment of agricultural easements by nonprofit organizations. We had one recently, and we were wanting to consider establishing of some type of fee, but we thought it was necessary to bring it to you to get your policy direction. We have discovered that some counties do not have fees for creating agricultural easements. We found out other counties may have an upfront fee. We had considered perhaps an annual fee to look at the amount of time that we spend to administer that particular easement, cost by the assessor office or things associated with property taxes. So we are coming to you and asking whether or not you would want to support us looking at a fee and perhaps bringing back something to you to consider in a public hearing, or whether or not you think this is something that has a value in the long term, either as collecting an annual fee or just a one-time fee for the purposes of getting something on the books and looking at the value of agricultural easements in the long term.
Yes, Mr. Rashid?
I want to disclose I met with the Riverland Trust yesterday, and this issue did come up. I don't see why we haven't. I would direct to a one-time fee to where we can have all the tax assessor, the the planning department, the permitting department, all that would be in our files to where we could refer to it in case there was a proposed development or something on those lines. But on an annual fee, what are we really maintaining? I think all we need to do is charge what it's going to cost to get this in our database, and we're not going to go back and keep amending these development easements because they're permanent. So once they're on the books, they're on the books. So I don't see an ongoing expense to have them on an annual fee.
All right. One of the reasons I like the annual fee concept is that I was just looking at if you're losing, in this particular example, $35 a year of property tax. So what kind of fee would you be charging? And so you end up with the cost of even going out and collecting the fee, perhaps being exceeding what you might recover. So if you have a one-time fee, you could build into that some, anticipated cost in the future, perhaps, and have calculate that in your initial fee in a way that you get it, it's done. The organization doesn't have to worry about having to come back up and fund this year after year after year, and it just becomes part of the process. It seems like that makes a simpler, cleaner transaction.
And I would just make one point, too, that typically when you're dealing with these conservation easements, you tend to be dealing with nonprofit groups, and everyone is having a tough time, especially right now, but especially the nonprofits are having a difficult time. And I, too, would just like to disclose that I did speak with the chairman of Sequoia Riverlands Trust about this, gave no indication, just visited a little bit about it. So,
well, I have a question.
Yes, Mr. Sheehan.
Where did we lose $35?
Oh, they gave the example of they were losing 7 acres of property to conservation, and that meant that we were losing $35 in property tax. But I mean, that's...
The $5 per acre is what we're looking at. We're looking at one example where it happened to be a 7-acre parcel of land that's involved, but it's the principal. Talking with the assessor, we're looking at perhaps potential loss of $5 an acre. So depending on the size.
Why would
of the
we give a
property.
reduction in value because there's a development easement on it? If it's farmland property, it's still farmed. Why would we reduce the value of that, assessed value of that property?
Yeah, that would be probably a question for the assessor, but when I talked with the assessor about this particular proposal, that's what he communicated to me.
Mr.
It might depend on whether that's being used for farming purposes.
The assessors, unless the property is under, say, Williamson Act contract or whatever, the property has to be assessed at its highest and best use, and if you have easements, it reduces the value. Easements such as what are described, it would reduce the value of the property.
Okay. Keep in mind that this is probably one of many that will be coming to the board in the future, because as you may recall, about 7 months ago, we had a presentation on Oaklands preservation and putting such lands into trust, and we're talking possibly hundreds of acres at that point. So if you wish us to develop a policy, a one-time fee, we can do that with a methodology based upon size and circumstances, and come back to the board and ask you for your consideration and adoption.
I don't want to see us I like to use that approach, but I want the assessor to come in here and tell me why the assessment on the property is going to go down and the fees that we're going to be losing, because even though you have a development easement and the property is being used for the same purpose, there's no reason that dirt can't be increased in assessments because of, let's say, under the Williamson Act, or the 2% a year or 1.5% we do a year. I don't see any cap on the assessor's valuation of that property.
I don't think there's a cap. I think it's, as the council said, that it may be just strictly philosophical, but if property is not encumbered by an easement, then it has potentially other uses. When you put that encumbrance upon it, now you're restricting its use. Therefore, you are going to reduce its value. Well, that's the logic behind it.
Well, the logic is it's still going to be used for the original use.
I agree.
Why would you give somebody a reduced assessment?
We just went through a general plan amendment process up in Kennedy Meadows to take a piece of property and turn it into commercial property.
Right.
You're going to take a piece of property now which is being used for grazing land, and you're saying it's going to be grazing land forever.
Right.
If someday somebody wanted to put a hunting lodge on there or do something else, you're saying, no, you can't do that. We have an easement that you can't do that.
You can put a hunting lodge on it, but you're not going to put a mini storage warehouse on it.
I think that's the issue. You are restricting its future use, and in so doing, you reduce its value, and we're really arguing over nothing right now.
We'll, as part of our proposal, we'll have the assessor do a joint effort with us and appear before the board.
Mr. Chair, I support the one-time fee and would make that motion to direct staff to return with a one-time fee proposal. And
He wants to speak to it.
Yes, come forward. I'll take a second while we're waiting for him to come
I'll
forward.
second
We have
that.
a motion by Mr. Cox, seconded by Mr. Vanderpool, and we'll hear a comment from, good morning, sir.
My name is Scott Spear, Chairman of the Board, 427 South Garden. This is currently not in the Williamson Act, the 6 acres. What's in Fresno County is in the Williamson Act. A conservation easement would be taxed at the same rate as the Williamson Act. So there would be tax revenues generated off of it. The future development potential, as Mr. Worthley mentioned, would be taken away, but this family is committed to agriculture, so they say they would never develop it. Who knows in 100 years? So it's only 6 acres. I realize you're under the gun to recover costs, and a one-time processing fee, you know, the middle ground somewhere, we realize you need to cover your costs as well. I would just request that it be something that we could live with as well under the current economic conditions.
Costs have to be related to reasonable.
To a reasonable fee, right?
I have a question.
Sure.
Are they being compensated for the easement?
Yes.
Financially compensated to put the easement on?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you.
You know, yeah, the state is basically buying the development rights. Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right, we have a motion and a second to the one-time fee brought back to recommendation of the staff. Motion is unanimously approved.
Thank you, Board.
And moving ever closer to lunch in number 76, request from the Resource Management Agency to present a status update, review, and discussion regarding the proposed 2010 amendment to the redevelopment plan for Porterville Redevelopment Agency Project Area Number 1. Morning,
Good
Mr. Hunt.
afternoon, board members. Roger Hunt, Assistant RMA Director. I'm here to present an update with regards to the City of Porterville Redevelopment Agency's intent to amend their plan, which, by the way, on June 15th, they did amend their plan. Back in November of 2009, the county was notified by the City of Porterville of the intent to amend their plan. Draft DIR was sent out in March of 2010. County Council submitted comments in a letter in April of 2010. The agency responded, the Redevelopment Agency for Porterville responded to the comments on May 2010. They acknowledged the receipt and that the comments and responses would be included in the final EIR. On June 1st, a joint public hearing was conducted with the City Council and the Redevelopment Agency, in which the RMA Director, Jake Raper,
spoke of the county's concerns and delivered county council's letter that listed the county's objections. During that public hearing, the comment period was closed, and the public hearing was continued to June 15th. I attended the June 15th public hearing. During the oral communication segment, comments were received from the public, particularly in the Corona Heights area, still asking for that area to not be included in the amended area. I also got up and spoke and reiterated the county's objections. The agency adopted the amendment with a small boundary correction to take out the Corona Heights area there in Porterville. The county's objections were that the draft EIR was inadequate, that it didn't meet CEQA requirements, that it does not adequately address the cumulative impacts, that the methodology used for determining blight was faulty, and that key findings required by the redevelopment law were not supported by evidence. The response by the staff for the redevelopment agency were that basically our objections were without merit, and they also commented that the county was not going to lose money, but instead that we would gain money, gain revenue. The auditor has determined the impact to the county general fund would be about $10 million over the life of the plan. And with that, I'll put it up. The item was for discussion and give us direction.
Discussion?
Well, I would think that,
Dennis?
well, I would want Gene to, when he meets with them, to make sure that we're made whole on this deal. That would be my direction from this supervisor.
I have a question. Since they went ahead and held the hearing, and are you saying they certified at that time?
There's been no notice of determination filed, at least there wasn't as of yesterday.
I know some of our objections were to throwing vast amounts of bare commercial land into their blighted area as well. I mean,
Most of the property that we objected to was left in the project as the city redesigned it.
What are our options as we move forward then? Because we obviously did not agree. We objected, and our objection was apparently dismissed without much comment. What are our next steps, because we continue to object?
Well, there are basically two, and one has been addressed, and that is to attempt to negotiate with the city to mitigate the impacts to the county through basically placing the entire city of Porterville, more or less, into a redevelopment agency. And that would be Mr. Rousseau's role, and there's already been mention that there is going to be conversation regarding that. That meeting will be viewed specifically as an attempt to settle a dispute, or in lawyers' terms, settlement negotiations. The other option, which would be my role, is that a legal action be filed challenging the project going forward with property, for example, that is clearly not blighted, contained in the redevelopment agency.
And we do both. We can do both options concurrently then?
Yes, sir, we can.
That would be my...
We can. I inquired yesterday as to, because there is a short period of time to file such an action, and as of yesterday, as far as we were aware, there had been no notice of determination filed. Is that?
I haven't heard of it.
As far as we know. So the time has not yet started to run. And it may be that the city is deliberately holding off on that so they have the opportunity to sit down and meet with Mr. Rousseau, essentially extending our very brief statute of limitations. And that would be helpful.
Well, certainly the comment made that if in the public ceremony there's setting that if the city was of the opinion that the county would actually generate more revenue than we would be losing, there ought to be ample grounds for discussions. That we sound like we'd be all both seeking the same objective. So I think it's appropriate, given the fact that we don't have much time, that we probably have to kind of do both. I mean, I guess we can leave it to the discretion of council to make, obviously, they make sure that we don't let the statute run. But in the interim, we would negotiate these issues through our CAO.
Mr. Chairman, I assure you that I will obtain from your board the necessary authority to bring a legal action before the statute of limitations runs, that authority would not be public information unless and until an action was actually filed.
All right. Anything else? All right. I think you have our given direction, so thank you. Thank you. Thank you for your report, Roger. And that brings us to our last item before we go into closed session. Item number 77 is a request from the Resource Management Agency to present a status update review and discussion regarding the City of Tulare Redevelopment Agency's request for subordination of Tulare County tax increment revenues to 2010 Tulare Redevelopment Agency tax allocation bonds.
I'm also presenting that item.
Good.
This item is an update with regards to the City of Tulare Redevelopment Agency and their intent to issue tax allocation bonds. On April 14th and on April 19th of 2010, the City of Tulare Redevelopment Agency sent a subordination request to the county auditor. The agency plans to issue $18 million in tax allocation bonds, and the county had 45 days to respond. The CAO responded on May 28th, which was 44 days after April 14th and 39 days after April 19th. The county is not in agreement with the request. First of all, there's no language authorizing subordination in Section 33607.7 of the Health and Safety Code. Second, the projection of incremental tax revenue and bond coverage provided by the agency failed to include the CRAF payments to the state. State taking of redevelopment funds poses a significant threat to fund adequacy. Finally, the economic downturn affecting the agency's tax increment revenue negatively is affecting it negatively, which is increasing the risk of making bond debt payments. The agency replied on June 1st, 2010, that the county had not disapproved the request during the 45 days so that their request was automatically approved. And subordination may cause a loss of county revenue should the agency be unable to make bond debt payments. Revenue loss could be as much as $263,000 in the first year alone. And with that, open up for discussion.
I would just ask the question, have the bonds been issued? Or have they gone to make the request, Bob? Do you know that answer? Okay.
Board members, good day. First, we have received...
Oh, please introduce yourselves.
I'm sorry, Bob Nance, Redevelopment Director for the City of Tulare. First question. We did receive from the CAO the designation that the county would decline to subordinate. We admit we did send a backup request with some additional information upon review. Again, Mr. Russo followed up with a letter saying, and the county determined they would not subordinate. It was unfortunate. It was a clerical error based on the recommendation of our bond counsel that a letter go out to all entities that had not responded. And I will say the vast majority did not respond in any way. And so unfortunately a blanket letter went out to everybody that said, since we haven't heard from you, we therefore would proceed with you haven't subordinated. I did speak with Rita Woodard, who received that letter and said, we understand it was a mistake. We apologize for that. It wasn't supposed to go to you. You have subordinated. The bonds have been sold. Again, the county, though, understanding has not subordinated to those bonds, and the bonds proceeded.
And just to follow up with that, they went at the rating you were basically expecting they were going to go at, correct?
Well, they went in with a rating with the understanding that the county had subordinated, would not subordinate, did not subordinate. So.
Yeah. But wasn't that was your goal, correct? You
well,
got
our goal
the
was to hope
well, obviously you'd want the best rating you could possibly get, but you had basically had a minimum standard that you wanted to be met, but that standard was met even with the county not subordinating.
We were hoping for an A or A minus. We ended up with a triple B plus, so that was satisfactory for the market, though I will say, which I'm sure you're all aware of. It was a very difficult bond sale day. We didn't do as well as we had hoped, but we did fortunately get the bond sold.
Thank you, Bob.
Okay, so this is authorizing the county administrative officer to take appropriate action as directed. What's the appropriate action to take?
At this point, there is no action to take. The bond's been sold. We're not subordinated, and we're good to go. So,
okay. All right, very good.
And again, I
Thanks for being here, Mr.
apologize. It
Nance.
was, again, a clerical error. We just didn't catch it. And it was a mistake of actually being too careful. Our bond counsel said this is not required to send this letter out, but as a courtesy, we were just being too courteous to the county, and I apologize for that.
Thank you for coming, Bob.
Thanks, Bob. Thanks for being
Thank
here
you.
this morning. That's the first. And now we are going, that concludes our regular session here, and we're going to close session, council.
Yes, sir, we are. You have already heard item A. You have items B through H as on your board's closed session agenda, and I do anticipate an announcement.
Okay. Yeah?
No, for me.